OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM, a packed show coming your way between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to have Adrian and Tommy with us in around half an hour's time to chat about that Sean Boylan documentary last night. Gary Murphy will be with us to look back on day one of the PGA Championship. There's the sports pages, the top stories, the FAI dominating proceedings yet again this morning. We've got our 20 by 20 mentor Sarah Rowe and Sarah Delaney a little bit later on, and then we've got a football hour coming your way between 9 and 10. As I say, plenty happening on the front of the FAI. Dan MacDonald will be with us to run the rule over tonight's council meeting and what is going to happen and what we need to keep an eye out for over the next little while. Graeme Souness will be with us to look ahead to the Champions League, and then Deal or No Deal with Stephen Doyle. So a packed show. You can tweet us at Off The Ball if you've got anything you want to get in touch about. Right now, though, we're bringing you two pieces from last night's OTB. John Giles will be with us in a moment, but first, here is Kenny Cunningham.
How are you now, Kenny? Looking forward to this massive amount of football that's going to come in a very quick period of time. We didn't get much of a break with the FA Cup final, a few days off, and here we are now with Europe over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's true, but I can't wait, Will, to be honest with you. Ever since this kind of format was announced for the Champions League knockout stages some time ago, I think straight away everybody thought, wow, this is going to be pretty special. Getting the group of teams together, albeit we'll have to wait another week for that in a condensed period of time. And those one-off games, knockout games from the quarter-final onwards, it's going to be pretty unique. We might as well just enjoy it because we may well never see it again in this type of format.
It changes things quite a bit as well, Kenny, because usually we get used to these two-legged affairs for the quarterfinals and the semi-finals, eventually getting to a final. That brings its own tactical side of things with away goals and having your own support in front of you. We're now looking at empty stadiums in Lisbon, one-off games and teams playing in pretty quick succession. It's a Champions League like no other, really.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's pretty unique. It'll be fascinating from the tactical point of view to a certain extent, Will. I think I won't be that surprised in terms of how it plays out. I think modern football, and you look at the majority of those teams who'll be left in the competition, Will, and obviously Manchester City and Chelsea born, there's still ties to be decided. But the modern way, really, in terms of the top sides, it's a possession-based game. Teams want to get on the front foot. They want to dominate. They want to be progressive. They want to throw players into advanced areas of the pitch, overcommit at times, create opportunities. This is the kind of philosophy, mindset, whatever you want to call it, of a lot of the top managers and football in general. So I think you see a lot of that anyway, Will, even if it was a two-legged format. I still think managers are still kind of very positive, even now away from home. The old days, of turning up at the away leg and shutting up shop, maybe pinching an away goal, but just sitting on the edge of your penalty box is pretty much gone. Apart of your Atletico Madrid, that is probably the one exception. But I think this one-off format, if anything, probably enhances that even more so. I think we'll see the majority of these teams, whoever they are, really kind of go for it and go at each other. That's the way modern teams really play. And with the amount of attacking quality in the ranks of those teams, absolutely packed. From the likes of potentially Real Madrid and Man City, which we'll see tomorrow evening, even down to the likes of Atlanta, probably my dark horses for the competition. Some wonderful attacking players, and a lot of the modern day managers now are giving these players freedom to get on the ball and go and play and affect the game. And that's what we're seeing a lot more of.
Yeah, it's very interesting setup as well, as you mentioned. Atalanta, PSG, Atletico Madrid on one side, and they've got a lot of the big hitters, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Juventus, all on one side. So potentially you could have a first-time finalist on the other side of the draw. You mentioned Man City against Real Madrid, Kenny. We've to go back a long time to go back to the first leg. It was on in late February. That Kevin De Bruyne show at the Bernabeu set up one goal, then scored the winner to give City a very good position going into this second leg. Real Madrid without Sergio Ramos as well. It seems to be reasonably well set up for City to progress, albeit they don't have Sergio Aguero for this one.
No, they don't. Yeah, he surprised us a little bit, Will. That first leg seems so long ago. I'm glad you told me what score it was. I'd almost forgotten up until today. It was that long ago. But yeah, tactically, he kind of threw a bit of a curveball and didn't he? Kind of played Kevin De Bruyne, as I remember, as a number 10. And I think Bernardo Silva played up there as a kind of a false nine. Jesus, I remember, occupying the left flank, and it was hailed as a bit of a genius stroke on the night, which, when you go on to win the game, fair enough. I wasn't bowled over by it personally, myself, Jesus for me is a natural number 9. He's at his best when he's operating between the two centre halves and off the shoulders in the centre half. So I don't think we'll see that format tomorrow night from Guardiola. I think we'll see them revert to the more traditional 4-3-3 with Jesus high up the pitch and Raheem Sterling and possibly Mahrez off the right-hand side. And then he'll just have his decisions to make in that midfield 3, which personnel to choose. So I think it'd be more of the traditional Manchester City kind of style of play and tactical setup that we're used to and clearly they're very comfortable with.
I would imagine too that decision that has to be made around Kevin De Bruyne. I think Guardiola would have to look back at the Chelsea game a few weeks ago where he put De Bruyne in as a false 9. He wasn't able to influence the game in the same way that he's able to do when he's further back. De Bruyne said himself he prefers to play as a central midfielder where he can kind of dictate where he moves in the midfield. I think he'll lose a lot of Kevin De Bruyne's game if you put him further forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I agree with you. A player of his quality, you need to get him in areas of the pitch where he can consistently get on the ball and influence the game. And even playing as a false number 9, somebody who kind of drops off into the space, you know, you're still dependent on other people feeding you the ball into your feet to get yourself into the game. When he plays his more traditional kind of number 8 position, him and whoever it'll be, it might be Silva tomorrow night, possibly Gundogan. He can still drift into an orthodox midfield position, receive the ball a little bit deeper, and then see that range of passing which he has. You know, he can pop the ball quickly, 10, 15 yards and break the lines. He can play those wingers in behind, those big diagonal switches. He has it all. He can travel with the ball himself, get shots off on his left and right foot. So I agree with you. For me, he's actually wasted as a withdrawn number 9. That number 10 role, I think there's an argument for that. But for me, he's best when he's facing the play in that slightly deeper position. And that kind of 4-3-3 formation, that V-shaped in midfield that Man City plays, they gave him a bit of license. He's not too disciplined and that rigid in that system where he has to stay in advanced areas high up the pitch. He has the freedom to drop in deep into little pockets and really go and affect the game as he sees fit. I think Guardiola trusts him. He knows the qualities that he has. So I think you're right. I think it'd be a mistake and I think it'd be wasted to play as a false number 9 tomorrow evening. I don't think we'll see it.
City's form was pretty decent after lockdown. You could argue that maybe the foot was off the pedal for some of the teams around them when they played them. But you can't get away from the fact, Kenny, they've lost 11 games in all competitions this season, which is massively up on the year before. They are conceding quite a few goals. Wayne Rooney pointing out in his column last weekend, particularly against the top 6 in England, and they were given huge problems by Wolves. So every kind of big game that City have played this season, they've really struggled to keep clean sheets. And under Guardiola in the Champions League, they've only kept 2 clean sheets in the knockout games that they've played. That has to give a bit of hope to Real Madrid because they're going to have to score at least twice tomorrow night.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, it's no coincidence the top teams, because top teams have the best players. And you have any kind of weakness in your team, it gets exposed at the highest level. There's no higher level than the knockout stages of the Champions League and the better teams, the Premiership that you're talking about, Will. We know where the deficiencies are in that Manchester City team, the centre in that defence. It wouldn't surprise me if Fernandinho drops in there. It's not ideal putting him in there, but I think he's probably the best option to play alongside Laporte. His experience, he's so dependable. He has that kind of defensive mindset. You'd really want to split him in 2, to be honest with you, and play him in both of those positions, centre half and hold the midfield for me. But obviously got the option of Rodri there, so he may well drop Fernandinho. I trust him ahead of Otamendi all day of the week, and it doesn't look as if the young boy Garcia is going to get the nod either. So that's probably the way to go. But I don't think it's just as simple as that, Will, in terms of that deficiency in the centre defence. We've all known about that. For me, Manchester City, the intensity hasn't been there since the start of the season in terms of that press, particularly the kind of counter press once they lose the ball. City at their very best a couple of years ago, they were hungry out of possession, Will. They were kind of, they were ravenous. They hunted in packs when they lost the ball. When they were in possession, they gave it away. Immediately that counter press came within 1-2 seconds, and the opposition team almost invariably gave it back to them. They've been a little bit more passive this year, physically a little bit more of a drop off, certainly the first half of the season. So a combination of all those little things for me are the reasons why we're seeing the kind of numbers that you've spoken about. So yeah, no, they have to improve. The intensity has to be better, and they need to find a solution in the centre of that defence. It's going to have to be a collective solution as well. It means Kyle Walker not just raiding down that right hand side with no kind of obligation to drop back in alongside his centre-half. He's going to have to pick and choose his moments when to get forward and keep his defensive discipline at times as well. So they need to rectify that, but they're an experienced enough group now to understand what's required to get over this hurdle of Real Madrid tomorrow evening.
What do you make of this Gareth Bale situation, Kenny, given 2 years ago now, 2018, he comes on against Liverpool, scores 2 goals, including that cracking bicycle kick, one of the best goals ever in the competition's history, to help them win the European Cup. And here we are 2 years later, he's refused to travel with Real Madrid, he's looking for a transfer away, and he won't be part of the squad tomorrow night. Quite the fall from grace, isn't it?
It is, but it's been coming for quite some time, Will, and in all honesty. I mean, if you look at it purely as his games since kind of post-lockdown, he hasn't really been involved. The injuries, been involved in a couple of games, so there's not really an argument there in terms of Gareth Bale starting. Possibly you could make an argument, get him on the bench. He's a big match player. He's kind of proven that, but obviously things have been right for quite some time. His relationship with the club, with the manager, all kinds of questions and kind of murmuring. So I don't think it's a huge surprise. I mean, he's remained pretty silent, to be honest with you. Probably his agent's done more speaking than the player during that period. But I don't think that'll surprise anybody. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to be a massive loss for Zidane. He's got some good options now in that area of the pitch, which Bale operates. Albeit it looks as if Hazard may get the start in Asensio tomorrow evening, but they've had their injury problems as well. So he'll be taking a certain gamble even with those two players in terms of injuries if he chooses to play them from the start. I think there's the argument there where Bale put him on the bench. Maybe that could have impact last 10, 15 minutes of the game if you needed maybe a bit of inspiration. But it looks as if that relationship has broken down, Will. And to be honest with you, that looks as if it's been the case for quite some time. So no real surprise when I heard that news.
Chelsea have to pick themselves up tomorrow night, Kenny, after losing the FA Cup final against Arsenal. They go to Bayern Munich this weekend, 3-0 down from the first leg. Serge Gnabry getting a couple, Robert Lewandowski getting the other at Stamford Bridge, which pretty much killed that tie. Given that Bayern Munich have pretty much had a 100% record since lockdown, given how impressive they've been and how good they are at this stage of the Champions League, we can't really give Chelsea any hope of beating them by 4 goals tomorrow on Saturday night.
No, little or no hope. You'd always make the argument, Will, on any given day. We've all seen anything's possible in a game of football. You could certainly make an argument in terms of the team that Chelsea put on the pitch. Got some wonderful players, particularly in attacking areas of the pitch. But those kind of frailties which they've had defensively over the course of the year, spoken about Manchester City, but Chelsea, it's been the same. Conceded too many goals on occasions, and this Bayern Munich team, again, at the highest level, Will, you get exposed, and they've been playing really well. I've seen a lot of them play since the lockdown. They're absolutely breathtaking at times. So much ferocious pace, Will, in the team, particularly in kind of wide areas. I'm guessing Gnabry's going to play, possibly Coman the other side. Even that kind of central midfield area, got some great options there. Goretzka's looking at a real player. Those kind of third-man runs from midfield into the box. He's getting his fair share of goals. Muller's had a second lease of life there as well. But you could go on and on. I like the defensive line. I like to look at Pavard. I'm a big fan of Alphonso Davies. Is magnificently well at left back. Going forward, there's probably nobody better. Will, I think even defensively he's getting better. He's improving the more time he spends in that orthodox kind of left back position. Alaba inside him is a wonderful play. Boateng probably is the only one he might actually play. For me, gives Chelsea a little bit of hope. I'm not as big as fan. I think there's question marks about kind of his mobility, his quickness on the turn, but just don't know whether Chelsea are even going to wrestle enough possession of the ball, because Bayern Munich they're devastating on the counter-attack, Will, because of the pace that I've mentioned there that they have, particularly in wide areas, but they can dominate the ball as well. Kimmich in that kind of hold the position, which he usually is in central midfield. They could well throw Thiago in there as well, and if they do them too, they just keep the ball between them like for the majority of the game. So it's a huge ask for Chelsea. I'm a big fan of Lampard and what he's done this season at Chelsea, but I really give him very little, if no chance of turning that around.
When it comes to turning around their defensive issues, and they've had problems at set pieces, problems with pace, problems with organisation at the back, is it purely down to the personnel, Kenny, in terms of does Frank Lampard need to go and now shop in his defence, given he's already spent a lot of attacking money for next year? Or is this down to maybe getting a good defensive coach in for next season? Are the players there good enough to be a solid defence for Chelsea, or do they need recruitment?
Now, it's an interesting point, Will. You don't hear that actually, I'm going to pay a compliment here, you don't hear it made too often. in terms of we're easy to say, well, he's not good enough, individual mistakes, that's not good enough from that player in the full-back or the centre-back position, he needs to improve. But people never question in terms of the amount of time that managers actually commit to the defensive side of the game. You hear a lot of stories now, managers reluctant to put in that amount of time on the defensive side of the game. I almost think it's too negative, implanting negative thoughts in the player's mind. What are we always thinking about defending, Gaff? We should be on the attack, be more positive. I think that's kind of an interesting conversation, which you don't hear too often. I suppose the answer to that, Will, is I don't know. I don't know how much work goes on the training pitch in terms of the defensive setup of the team. But from what I see week in, week out, again, what I've seen at Chelsea, I don't think he's got a natural pair in there at centre-half. He's got some great options there, a bit like Manchester United, 4, 5, 6 options, players who can play at centre-half. But for me, there's not a natural pair in there. Even probably Rudiger, who maybe 5, 6 months ago you thought, yeah, you'd hang your hat on him, get a good one to play alongside him. Even now you're looking at Rudiger, he's taken him out of the team. Lambert's had to take him out of the team. He's a little bit off colour. So, so putting aside that in terms of the collective organisation of the team, I think they need at least one dominant centre-half in there. I definitely think they're short. I think they could clear the decks of maybe 2 or 3 and get a top-class centre-half. We're probably going to see one over the next couple of days, and the Napoli short going to the new camp to play Barcelona and Koulibaly. Another top-class performance from him. He's been highly consistent really for the past couple of seasons. No surprise there. He's probably the best 2-3 centre-halves in the world and has been for some time. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that Chelsea now are in the position to bid for a player of that calibre, as are the likes of Manchester United and even Manchester City. I think that type of person who really you can't pick apart defensively, solid, physically strong, aggressive, good in 1v1 situations, decent read of the game, competent in possession, which sometimes isn't enough for some managers, I feel. Even the likes of Frank Lampard, I look at him and think, is he happy? Is he going to be happy with a centre-half who wins headers, wins tackles, senses danger, organises people? But you know what? He might be a little bit clunky on the ball. He might have the ability to step into midfield and break the lines with his passing. Is that going to hold them back? I'd like to think not, but that's how the game's obviously changed over the past couple of years. But for me, it's the exact type of centre-half that Chelsea need. Not only Chelsea, a number of teams. I could argue Manchester United, Tottenham and Manchester City. That type of centre-half who really, from a defensive point of view, you can pick apart. He may not be the best ball-playing centre-half in the world, but you know what? I'll always suffer that. When I look at recruiting a top-class centre-half, I always look at the basics that I've spoken about there in terms of defensive qualities which you have. I just don't see enough of that in some of the centre-halves operating at the top level now.
Well, one of the players that gave Chelsea's defence lots of trouble last weekend was Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang in that FA Cup final. Sumptuous chip to win the game for Arsenal. It looks, at least if the Telegraph are to be believed tonight, that Arsenal now have an agreement with him on a 3-year contract. He's going to cost them a lot of money, Kenny. He's 31 years of age, so his decline is probably inevitable in the coming seasons. But was there an inevitability about the fact that Arsenal had to pay him to keep him around?
No, I think there was an inevitability that they had to push as far as they could. I never agree with the statement, I'll give him what he wants. I mean, that's what got him into the problems that they have in terms of giving Ozil the amount of money that he wanted. Arsene Wenger obviously gave the board the green light. He wanted Ozil to stay, and he gave them the green light to give Ozil that massive wage. And for me, it was kind of counterproductive. It actually caused him some problems. It's the reason why Aaron Ramsey left the football club, because he wanted parity with Ozil, didn't get it, and off he went. And again, for me, it's a lingering problem with Aubameyang, looking at Ozil not making any contribution whatsoever to the team, earning $350. Now, one of his agents banging on the door saying, well, how we need parity with this player, the contribution my player's making. How can you make an argument he's not entitled to a wage similar to what Ozil's on? So that's the problems that you create for yourself. Manchester United did the same with Sanchez. Huge mistake taking him into the football club and paying him that type of wage. Very quickly, everybody else, particularly the players of a similar level, are looking for parity with that wage, and other players are looking to be brought up accordingly as well. But I always felt they'd push as far as they could, Arsenal. It looks as if they've done that. And I'm actually pleased, to be honest with you. Aubameyang looks like a player, his body language, that he's really enjoying his football. I think it's a good stage from their great football club, Arsenal. No guarantee of Champions League football going forward. That's the gamble that he's taken. He's got to back himself and his teammates to bring Champions League football back to Arsenal the next couple of years. but he could be instrumental for Arsenal, those younger players, their development. He's kind of a beacon for those younger players in terms of how he plays, very inspirational in terms of his attacking qualities. And you mentioned kind of his age. Well, I think you have to take everyone in his merits. 31 years of age, normally you'd say he's at his peak, he's just over, his legs are going to be shot in 3 years. Not always the case. I think Willian at Chelsea is a great example of that. I think these lads, I look at their kind of physical makeup, albeit I'm looking from a distance, and I think these lads are real athletes. They're kind of thoroughbreds. You know, you look at the likes of Ronaldo, what he's doing at his age, and a number of other players. Their physical condition nowadays is absolutely phenomenal. So he might be able to extend in terms of his quality performance at Aubameyang for the next 2 or 3 years. That's where Arsenal will be banking on. And if he can maintain that level of performance during the length of that contract, well, then those wages will be money well spent.
Well, Kenny, before I let you go, I'm told your former club Tolka Rovers have set up a GoFundMe page. They've run into a bit of financial bother because of COVID-19 restrictions. The club bar has had to close, which means they've lost out on a bit of revenue, and they're now trying to raise €40,000. You can get the details on our Twitter. That's twitter.com/offtheball. We've got a link to the GoFundMe there as well. Kenny, they reliably tell me when you were at the club you were too young to drink and you would have been a teetotaler anyway.
Yeah, my dad put a bit of money behind the bar, though. I will say that. So the Cunningham family, indirectly, let's say, would have made a contribution over the years. Probably put a few quid in the slots and the snooker table. But I'm sorry to hear. I'm sorry to hear that. I really enjoyed it. I only had a year up in Tolka Rovers, Griffith Avenue Extension, but I loved it. They had a wonderful facility there, the pitch, and obviously the bar area that you're talking about. So, yeah, you know, I'm not one for jumping on the internet and searching out these things, but I'll make an exception in Tolka.
Koepka has become a major issue. I know Willie Caballero was in goal for the FA Cup final last week, but Kepa was bang out of form even going into the last few weeks of the season.
Yeah, I don't think he's done it since he got there, Will, to be honest. You know, I don't think his form has been great since he's come to the club. He doesn't. I spent a lot of money on him. What did they spend? About 70 million or something, didn't they?
World record for a goalkeeper, I think, before Alisson went to Liverpool.
A huge disappointment. You know, when you consider that you know, the goalkeeper Liverpool got, Manchester City got, you know, terrific, got really worth their money. This lad hasn't, so he's got a job to do there with the central defenders and the goalkeeper, which is a lot. It's a lot to do, but very disappointing.
Difficult positions to try and recruit into, not as if there's a whole lot of options around for centre-backs or top goalkeepers. For Arsenal, John, this is a big lift, isn't it? Because this season was, if they'd lost the final, it's a miserable-looking season. They've gone through 3 different managers and they failed to qualify for the Europa League or Champions League if they hadn't won last Saturday. This bought their ticket into Europe and it brings a trophy for Mikel Arteta. Have you been impressed at his management job at Arsenal so far?
Yeah, I think he's done a good job so far in very difficult circumstances. You know, he inherited a lot of trouble. Ozil, for one. I don't think he was even in the country last week. So that's still a problem with him. He's got Aubameyang now, I think he's 31, I believe, Will.
He is.
And he's very good. He actually won the cup for them. Now, what are they going to do? You know, his contract is up next year. He's 31. He's in a very strong position to demand a big contract. Are they going to give it to him? It's going to be difficult to know. You know, Arteta's got to get the backing now of the board. I think whatever he wants now, they're going to have to give it to him because he's going to be free next year. Players don't commit themselves, I don't think, when they're going to be out of contract at the end of the season. And they need him really badly.
Yeah, I get the feeling they have to keep Aubameyang because at this point he's scoring more than a goal a game. I think he's got over 50 goals in 80-odd appearances in the Premier League. He showed his composure with the way he finished against Man City in the semi-final and then that gorgeous chip in the final against Chelsea. Yeah. That's the type of quality that Arsenal will probably struggle to attract in, John.
Definitely. They're in a very difficult position because they've been a bit wary about paying anybody big money like they gave Ozil. But obviously this fella's done more than Ozil ever did at Arsenal. So they're in a difficult position. Do they do the same thing again? And he's 31. Is he still going to do it? I think they have to do it. I think the fans will demand it. I think they'll have to do it. And as long as Aubameyang keeps performing the way he has done, we've seen with players before, Will, you know, they get the contract and then they put their feet up. You know, now I'm not saying he's going to do that, but it's always a temptation to do it. I've seen it so many times that they play their boots off to get the contract, and then they don't try as hard anymore. So that's what they have to judge. at this particular stage with Aubameyang.
It is a risk, I suppose, in terms of the age profile as well, John. Willian reportedly is going to sign from Chelsea on a 3-year contract. Chelsea only wanted to give him 2. He's 32 years of age. Aubameyang is looking for a 2 or 3 year contract, probably bumper wages. They've given David Luiz a contract extension. He's the wrong side of 30. After a while, these guys become expensive when, in theory, their career is going to be on the decline.
Yeah, well, they've got to keep doing it. Are they going to do it? This is the problem, you see, Will. They get a big contract, and we've seen it so many times before. Fella and then he stops playing because he knows he has. Well, Ozil did it, and he got the big contract, and that was the end of it. He hasn't kicked the ball since. Now it depends what type of character Aubameyang is, and the other players that's in that position. But I don't think they're going to have any choice. I think he's holding all the cards, Aubameyang, because the fans will go mad if they let him go, and if he doesn't do what's needed to be done and he eases down a bit, they're going to be in trouble there. So it's a very difficult one for them.
An Arsenal great favourite in Ian Wright has been speaking this evening about the decision that Arsenal took yesterday, where they've decided to let 55 of their staff go because of COVID-19. I think this seems particularly galling for some Arsenal fans and quite sad as well, John, when you consider that they've got a billionaire main owner in Stan Kroenke. They're paying people like Mesut Ozil £300,000 a week to sit at home and not even be involved in the squad at the moment. And here's 55 people who are probably earning very little at the club, and they've now lost their jobs during this pandemic.
Oh, it's dreadful. It's dreadful. There's no excuse for it. The amount of money that they're spending on the players and in relation to that type of situation, it's peanuts. But remember, Liverpool tried it. Well,
yeah, and it was a backlash.
They were going to lay off a thing, and they changed their mind because of the response actually from the supporters. Because don't forget, most of the supporters in football clubs, whether it be Liverpool or Arsenal, are working class people themselves, and they don't like working class people, which most of those lads are working for Arsenal or Liverpool, are going to lose their jobs. Yeah. It's not like, well, I think they weren't losing their jobs at Liverpool. I think they were furloughed, but the government was paying the money, and that was it. But it's shameful, to say the least, that a club like Arsenal, who have the money and spent the money and are talking about giving Aubameyang, 300 grand, probably 300 grand a week, that they can lay people off. I think it's very, very bad form. I don't think it'll happen. I think the supporters will react against this, Will.
In terms of a man who lost his job, who was very popular with a set of supporters, Eddie Howe at Bournemouth has stepped away after their relegation from the Premier League back down to the Championship. Quite remarkable, last 5 or 6 years that he's had in charge. Took over when they weren't in the best of spots, got them up through the Championship into the Premier League, and they were a steady Premier League team over the last few years. Eventually, I guess time caught up with them somewhat this year and they went down from the Premier League. But Eddie Howe can probably feel it's quite unfortunate for him that this marriage with Bournemouth has ended the way it has. Yeah,
I feel sorry for him. I think he's done a great job there, but Will, to be honest. But there's always a possibility that when you're performing miracles, which I think he did, to do what he did, that it's going to come at you somewhere along the line. And Big Jack, the late Jack Charlton, used to say to me, don't say any longer than 3 years, because fans get used to you, and if you're performing miracles, they expect it every year. And it's happened to Eddie Howe, there's no doubt that it's caught up with him. It's caught up with him. And I don't know whether he resigned or whether he was sacked. Well, I think they came to a conclusion that maybe he was paid by his from his side, that he was paid off to do it. But I'm sure they could have kept him if they'd wanted to keep him.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Sunday Paper Review on Off the Ball.
When he wants to do something, he does it. A hugely impressive person, apart from being obviously a brilliant golfer.
My cousins disliked their dog so intensely that they renamed it Scalacci.
Yeah.
And the dog was called Scalacci from then on.
It's a great piece of journalism. That sums up what he's like. The intro to this is just brilliant. He is an absolute control freak.
Digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on Off the Ball.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Just coming up to 8 o'clock on this Friday morning, if you're just joining us, you have missed Kenny Cunningham and John Giles on last night's football show. Plenty of football to come between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to have Graeme Souness with us to look ahead to the Champions League, and we're also going to be joined by Niall Quinn to chat about the FAI ahead of the big council meeting later on today. Plenty more besides that as well. Gary Murphy will be talking about the US PGA Championship, and we've got Deal or No Deal as well. And on top of that, the back pages and the sports news. Anything you want to get in touch with, please tweet us at Off The Ball or comment on the stream below. We've got Adrian Barry with us as ever on a Friday morning. And also Tommy Rooney is with us because of the class Sean Boylan documentary that aired last night. Now, Adrian, I didn't see this, so Tommy, you are with us. Tommy, kick us off here. How good was the Sean Boylan documentary? I must catch up with it this weekend.
Lads, any Sean Boylan content on a Thursday evening is good. It was absolutely class. It was just, there was just lovely stories, great quotes. There was the
What was that quote, Tommy?
Mix.
Give us that quote. Give us that quote that you tweeted last night.
The quote. It's top of the show. Give me a second. I don't want to butcher this now. It was, he was telling the story about
being yourself. That's the one.
Being yourself and not being afraid to be someone else. Just give me 1 second to tell you this. I actually should have had the image on screen because it's nearly his face that makes it when he's telling it. So it's in life, you may not be able to do things as good as other people, but don't be afraid of being as good as other people. Just be yourself and be as good as you can. Now, when Sean Boylan tells you that, you believe it. You just say to yourself, let's not worry about living up to other people's expectations. Let's just do what we can. And look, the one thing about Boylan is, and I'm not going to say he's a contradiction, but we kind of spoke about it a few months ago. He's such a nice man. He's such an endearing man. When he tells you stories, he draws you in. But there's a ferociousness about him too. And I'm actually not sure that ferociousness came out last night. And I think that's actually a good thing, because I think for a long time, Sean Boylan and that Meath team, they were tarred and they were sullied with the brush of being dirty and causing controversy. But
sullied.
Boylan is somebody who's helped a lot of people around the country. Like Conor Laverty's a footballer from Down, and I knew that Conor and Sean were friends, but I wasn't sure how. And Conor tweeted last night that before a club championship match, everyone told him he was injured, he wasn't going to make it, no chance. And ring Sean Boylan. Sean Boylan looks after him, gets him ready for this club championship match, and he plays. Kieran Donaghy's travelled down to Sean Boylan on the morning of All-Ireland finals. Like, who else in the country are you doing that to on the morning of an All-Ireland final? There's a magic about Sean Boylan. I think that's shown through last night. And there was an innocence, it's nearly an innocence. Is it an innocence? At times, it was nearly like he seemed surprised that he got married. He was surprised. It was a really touching moment towards the end where he spoke about his dad. And if you can learn more about his dad, lads, go do that, because I know there's a brilliant documentary about it as well. And the role that he played in the Civil War in Ireland, and his role as, I suppose, a leader of men back in the 1920s. Like, he was a good friend of Michael Collins, and you love a documentary on Boylan's riches with his dad, but at the end he's like, he didn't realise how much his dad cared about him. Like, and I don't know.
There's a tear in his eye. The more I hear about that Meath team and the more I hear about Sean Boylan, like, it's I don't know. Look, from the outside in, as a kid, there was a point. I was thinking about it last night. There was a point in my childhood when I loved that Meath team and that sort of squared up jersey and all that. It was absolutely class, and the swagger about them. And then there was a point soon after that, maybe it's a consequence of my own geography, that I began to hate them. But I always, before I got to know what it was that made Sean Boylan tick, assumed that he was a mirror image of that team. And by all accounts, like, listen to the lads last night, Sean Boylan never told us to go out and pull a dirty stroke or to sort of get involved in the punch-up. Like, the divergence between the team and the manager seems, the more you hear and see about it, seems enormous.
Okay, that's where I kind of mentioned the contradiction earlier, Adrian. I think it's true. That's shown true last night. But there's like, Bernie Flynn has told stories of Bernie Flynn got in a row with Andy McEntee at training in the early 90s. And two boys flaking each other in training. And one of the first things Colin O'Rourke said at the start of the documentary, and it's something I've heard before, was that the first thing Sean Boylan did to get right was to get the players to stop hating each other in terms of club football. They actually came together on a Sunday. They could kick how many colours of sugar out of each other, and then on a Tuesday they were in and they represented Meath and they played together. But I actually think that he brought a respect to the players amongst themselves, and then they were able to go out and train. And the same way that Kilkenny do it, they went as hard as they could in training. And there's a story that Bernie Flynn has told before, that himself and Andy McEntee got into a bit of a scrap during training, and it went too far. McEntee gave him a dunt, Flynn hit him back. There was a load of people at training watching it, and Boylan comes in and breaks up the fight. The lads don't listen. So Boylan comes in and sends the lads down to the corner, like two young Gossens, go do laps of the field. The lads thought that was a bit embarrassing. So the boys go off doing the laps of the field, and next thing start getting into proper scrap on the side of the field. Sean Boylan stops training, runs the length of it, squares up to the two boys. Now, Flynn mightn't be that much bigger than him, but Andy McEntee's probably bigger than Sean Boylan. And Boylan puts up the fist and says, lads, if you're going to do it, I'll go at you here now and I'll take the two of you on. So there was a ferocity about Sean Boylan. He may not have told the lads to go out and smash the other team, but there was no quarter given. And you were told that in no uncertain terms that there was a hardiness about Meath. As the way O'Rourke said, you don't lie down. If you're not hurt, you don't lie down. You don't show weakness, like. So.
But that's a different thing than boxing the head off people. That's my point. That there's the team. It actually reflects the team that they were taking pride. I can't remember exactly who it was. I know it definitely wasn't Mick Lyons, because he was very much the star turn last night, who for a solid hour sat there and said absolutely nothing.
That's but the beauty of Mick Lyons.
It might have been Beggy. One of them turned to the other and was like, it was almost sort of reflecting on it himself, sort of saying that, well, he never told us to do anything, i.e. we were just a dirty shower ourselves.
Adrian,
yeah, like I don't know if the Meath were just dirty, Adrian. Like football was just like that. Like if you look back at that Cork All-Ireland,
listen, do you know? I thought they were going to. I actually thought they were going to not reference it at all last night. With about 50 minutes to go, there was no mention of it, and I was like, lads, let's not be brushing history here. And then suddenly they went on into a montage of Meath's best wrestling
I loved it with the music.
I
really enjoyed that. Yeah, I found it hard to sleep after that, lads.
Adrian, I want to hear more about your dislike for Meath as a young Westmeath boy.
I just hated them, and like they're easy to hate when they go around with the sleeves shorn off on and the collars up, and I fully appreciated, by the way, that you know the England-Ireland rivalry that they don't really get very much, or the Australia-New Zealand rivalry that Australia don't really care about, or Canada-America that America don't really care about. Well, that's the Westmeath thing. We wouldn't have been a dot on their shoe on, and they wouldn't have had a clue. But like we hated them and we couldn't beat them. And Desi stood in front like 5 yards out from the goal to knock over a point to beat them in the early 2000s, and that never happened. But it made it out obviously a few years later. But yeah, no, I definitely as a kid definitely thought and admired and sort of liked the cut of their jib, and that a lot of those that team, Brian Stafford, like what a footballer.
That's not true last night. Stafford and O'Rourke, how good they were really on the football pitch as well.
How long are Westmeath going to continue to go on about this Leinster quarter-final that they beat Meath in? Like that's what it was, or was it a semi-final? Semi-final. Sorry, it was in Croke Park, so it was a semi-final.
Oh, listen,
I'll be honest.
I've made this point before. Like that day is right up there for me with 2004.
It was one of the most obscene Gaelic football matches I ever experienced in my life. And I have family in Westmeath, and I would have taken great joy after Desi Dolan missed that free in about a decade of rubbing it in their faces. But like, I don't know if Westmeath are ever going to let that go, and I wouldn't let it go either. Sure, Meath are still talking about 91 against Dublin.
So, Westmeath, a dot in your shoe, Tommy, would you go along with that?
Not necessarily. I've always enjoyed the rivalry with Westmeath. I think that
then the politics now.
Well, for the last decade, they've been better than Meath, like.
Here, the thing, the quadruple of games against Dublin, I either had totally forgotten or was just never aware that they went off on the piss to Scotland the weekend before. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this one. It's worth watching for this alone. It's like after the third game, Boylan turns around and he says, "Okay, I want to bring you away, lads." So he goes to all the wives and girlfriends and he says, "Can I bring the lads away?" And they said, anything to beat the Dubs, Shawnee. So it turns out that he actually organised a trip for all the families to go, and they all go to Scotland on the rip. And there's photos, and I think it's Sean Boylan playing, what's the instrument called? He referenced it, the mouth organ. Yeah. So he's down, like it's early in the morning, and they trained the next day on the Friday, and they trained on the Saturday. They went out on the Friday and trained the Saturday, Sunday. They come back and they met Dublin. But apparently
so
that
this was before the third game. They go on
before the fourth game. Yeah, but what I would love to dig out is radio archives that weekend in Ireland. Apparently, all the radio stations had sports psychologists on, or psychologists saying that this was crazy and that all the tension of the previous 3 games was going to leave the Meath lads and they wouldn't be able to get themselves up for the Dublin game a week later. Wasn't true.
That's remarkable.
Sean Boylan knew.
And
well, look, it looks like genius now. I would say it looks like genius now because they won. Like, the winners write history, Tommy.
No, it's an absolute scientific fact. Go on the lash the week before a big game and you will win. It's as simple as that. So where does this rank? Was it better than The Last Dance in your view, Tommy?
Where does it rank?
The great sports documentaries you've seen recently.
It left me. Do you know what? It left me wanting more Sean Boylan, which is probably a good thing. Wouldn't you say it's a good thing? I'd say that it's very good. It's very enjoyable. It's a lovely hour of television, but Jesus, I wanted more. Like, I wanted an hour on his dad. I wanted an hour on beating the Dubs. Really... I wanted an hour on rubbing it in Mayo and Cork's faces. Just give us 4 hours of Sean Boylan.
I'd have taken an hour of chat of Sean Boylan because it was like
just Sean talking.
Sort of documentary about Sean Boylan that he kind of featured in sporadically that I don't think actually really captured his true essence either. From the interviews we've had him in over the last couple of years, particularly, like he's such a fascinating, interesting speaker. It doesn't lend itself to a documentary like that, where it's mostly other people paying tribute to him. So I'd take more of just him.
Yeah. There was one Friday, Adrian, a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember this, Eoin, but we dragged Sean up the road. It was just for a chat on Friday evening, and I think we meant to kick off at 7. And we wanted to wrap at 8. I think he was a bit late, but I think we went beyond. I think after 9 o'clock, once we went off air, we recorded even more. It was about 2 hours of Sean Boylan just telling stories. He's got this amazing stream of speaking. It's not like a stream of consciousness. It's just constant stories and anecdotes. It's just a wonderful man to listen to. And absolutely, give us a 9-part series of Sean Boylan.
I know what Owen's next question is going to be, and the answer is Steve Kerr. Sean Boylan is Steve Kerr.
It's a good comparison. I like that.
Phil Jackson.
I like that. Or it's probably a kind of a mixture of both, really.
Yeah, that's fair.
On a play, I'm sure both of those aspired to be Sean Boylan when they were going through their relative coaching careers. Tommy, glad to hear you enjoyed it. I enjoyed listening to you enjoying that documentary. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Tommy Rooney there. Let's tell you what's coming up on OTB AM this morning. We're going to get to Gary Murphy first of all in just a few moments, talking about day 1 of the USPGA. Then there's the sports pages, the top stories coming your way at 8:30 and at 8:40. A 20 by 20 piece with mentor Sarah Rowe and Sarah Delaney then coming your way at 10 to 9. And then 9 to 10 is a blockbuster hour. We've got Graeme Souness first up at 9:05, previewing the Champions League last 16 clashes this weekend. Niall Quinn will be with us at 9:25. It is a make or break month for the FAI. It is a huge evening for them today, a huge afternoon for them with their council meeting at the Red Cow Hotel. And at 9:40, the deal or no deal, the last one of the week with Stephen Doyle. So plenty to get stuck into today. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We'll get to Gary in just a moment, Adrian, but USPGA day 1, plenty to talk about, not least at the very end when Bryson DeChambeau hits the ball so hard he actually breaks the shaft of his club. This was borderline going to be one of the great dramatic moments in sport this year, when we all thought Bryson's after whacking his club off the ground in anger. The whole theatre surrounding this guy is about to go up to a whole new level. But unfortunately, it was a total accident, and he was really polite with the official, and perhaps the mask didn't slip fully at that moment. But still, everything this guy does at the moment is just blockbuster.
Yeah, he is definitely box office. I know Joe was making that point when he was on during the week that's what comes now, Bryson DeChambeau. And it was an interesting one. I don't know how good or bad it was for his brand, actually, Eoin. I know it's the big question that we should ask ourselves sort of in the aftermath of every exposure to Bryson DeChambeau, whether this has been a positive or negative on the power ranking of brand DeChambeau. But yeah, it was funny watching it because I was, as you can tell from the conversation we've just had, toggling between it and the Sean Boylan documentary, and I happened to catch that moment for sure. But there was a real sense of excitement amongst the commentary team, which I was definitely feeling myself, that possibly Bryson DeChambeau had teed off, hit a fairly wayward shot, and was pretty pissed with himself and took it out on his driver by slamming it off a tee marker or something. And they couldn't, the replay kept coming up from ESPN, and it would show him taking a shot. And it was like on that first swing, the first time you saw it, he took a swing and the club head came around and you were looking, is it going to get dislodged? And as he completes a swing, you realise the club head is staying put. And the sense of excitement of, oh my God, he's melted his club off the ground. And his driver, if that had been the case, he wouldn't have been allowed to replace his driver. If you damage your club in anger, you're not allowed to replace it. Whereas if it's been an accident, as it turned out, I was going to use the word unfortunately, purely because of the drama, for him, that wasn't the case. He leant on the club to bend down and pick up his tee, and he was as surprised as everybody that the club head came off, and it was easily replaceable. So it was a real moment of drama, and it went on for sort of what felt like about a half an hour. In reality, was probably about a minute and a half. But like you say, every little thing he does now, and even you had Brooks Koepka last night, sort of giving him a bit more smack talk, needling him along. Golf needs more of it, in my book.
Absolutely. I'm just looking up the chances here of what did Brooks Koepka finish on last night? He finished on 4 under, so he's 2 shots clear of Bryson DeChambeau. What we want is for them to be paired up at some point this weekend, because it's bubbling along nicely. Like the idea of, we don't need science to play the game, I just go out and play the game. It's such a needless comment from Brooks Koepka. What I always find funny about Bryson DeChambeau is that he doesn't need any of the antics whatsoever to come across as ridiculous sometimes, because of that Puma flat cap. Like that does the job enough for Bryson DeChambeau. He doesn't need anything else. But I also appreciated, I think it was McGinley, and you could hear the sadness in his voice when he realised that actually no, Bryson DeChambeau hadn't melted down, that the club actually had just broken. He didn't actually whack it off the ground, because, as we say, that would have been the moment to take the whole thing to the next level. Like, I mean, is this one of the more interesting times to actually be watching the sport? I wonder. It seems that certainly with him, I definitely get the impression with Brooks Koepka, being flying this flag for a while, that he is one of the more interesting guys to be following with every single stroke.
Well, he's identified his target now, his prey, and he is going for him at every hand's turn. Like the ant stuff, obviously, last week, totally needless, but absolutely genius. And that point last night that he made at the end of the interview that you've referenced there, where the interviewer asks him something benign enough about his round, and he wanders into the usual cliche followed by, well, you don't need to be a scientist to work your way around this course. And I'm not even sure the interviewer realised what he just said. It was like a moment of gold that went totally unchecked by the commentary team and the interviewer, and the little wry grin on his face as he said it. It's almost like he's made it his mission now to needle this guy at every hand's turn, and long may it last, because it's probably keeping him interested from a concentration point of view when he's a couple of shots ahead, or he's chasing the lead, and he's got the picture of that flat cap in his mind, and he's chasing him down. I'm sure it's helping him. I'd be absolutely certain of it. It's sure it should helping the rest of us as well, because you don't want to take your eyes off it. Okay, before we get to Gary Murphy, just to tell you that we want to mention a fundraiser that's taking place at the K Club. Now, Amy Lowry unexpectedly lost her dominant right hand due to a really aggressive and extremely rare form of cancer called clear cell sarcoma. Funds are being raised to provide Amy with an artificial bionic hand, and your support is needed to help raise €75,000. Amy is already nearly halfway there and has raised over 35 grand through the help of her family and friends on her GoFundMe page. They're also running a golf event at the Ryder Cup course, Palmer North, at the K Club. The event will take place on Thursday, the 27th of August. Gary Murphy is playing. It's one hand, one hole. Beat the pro on the 8th hole on the day as well. I'm delighted to say that Gary Murphy, who is the golf pro at the K Club, is with us this morning. Gary, how are you getting on?
Very well, guys. Good morning to you.
Let's start with Bryson DeChambeau then. Have you ever hit a tee shot so hard that your club is broken in half?
Certainly not. I've certainly broken a driver leaning on it after hitting a tee shot, but and it was great because McGinley was spot on with that rule last night, which is only fair. But as Adrian was saying earlier, it's not like DeChambeau wouldn't be organised, and he had a perfect replacement. And he's a very interesting character, but it was a good break for DeChambeau, let's say.
Were you, like the rest of us, Gary, were you hoping that he'd smashed it in anger?
Not really, because his driver is such a story. I mean, he's hitting the ball crazy distance with it, although Adam Scott did give him a nice dig, saying that he thought he would be a bit longer than what he was, but DeChambeau he's a strange character. I think that he's box office. It's a case now where, that the thing with him and Koepka and whatever he does gets commented on. Not necessarily like the way he plays as such. I don't think it's something for everyone to copy. Probably all those golf coaches will get a lot of business out of it. But listen, he's a superstar player who's only been in the pro game, 4.5, 5 years, and he's certainly box office, but not a huge fan of the way he does things.
Why so? What particularly is it about the way he does things that rubs you up the wrong way, that perhaps rubs people up the wrong way in general?
I always prefer the kind of artist golfer. I know with modern technology, the players are so fit now. It's almost nearly a lost art. Just even the way he played the first hole, he just stands up and hits it 50 yards left, and he's hit a little flick of a wedge into the green. This course, in theory, will suit him because you can cross, as Mickelson did, you can cross fairways and not really get in trouble. It seems to be the further offline you are around here, the easier it is, which should, in theory, play into his hands. But I think I don't want this to be the norm in 10 years' time, and unfortunately, with certain players, that's probably the way it's going to go. Young kids are going to watch this and go, I'm going to get in the gym, hit it as far as I possibly can and go find it. I think I'm still, and I'm not being an old fuddy-duddy, but I think this strategy to golf is something that we should try hang on to if we can.
And how do we hang on to it, Gary? Is it just kind of more regulations with the length of the golf courses, with how challenging golf courses are and where the specific challenges lie, or is pointing to the golf courses the wrong place to look at the moment? Is it the equipment that the golfers use? How do you arrest this?
The golf ball is the big thing. I think if you saw at Muirfield Village a couple of weeks ago, they had two tournaments on the same golf course in 2 weeks, and they had two totally different setups. The first week, I think there was 49 guys finished under par. The second week, there was 9 guys under par. Now that's all well and good, but who has the money to prepare courses like that week in, week out? Very few people do. The golf ball, the technology is amazing. It's very hard to tell the difference with a guy driving a ball now off 20 handicap and 10 handicap because the equipment is so good. It's so much easier to hit the ball. It hasn't directly transferred down to the amateur game at the mid-level, but at the top level it certainly has, because we're seeing a more scientific approach where top amateurs, you look at Morikawa, Hovland, Wolf, they're coming out of the college scene and they're ready to compete on tour. The only way to slow it down is the golf ball.
Gary, I wonder I'm interested to get a professional golfer's take on this, because looking at it from the outside in, I can't remember not quite a needless rivalry. The only thing I can think about is Sergio Garcia and the rest of the tour in terms of that sort of over and back, and Koepka obviously taking every opportunity that he can to have a needle. There he was at it again last night about the scientist thing, and with the ant stuff obviously last week. From the outside looking in, it's brilliant to watch, absolutely box office. I wonder, from a professional golfer's point of view, are the rest of the players as eager to see what Koepka has to say about all of this, and is that sort of level of it's nothing to do with golf, but bloody hell, it's entertaining? Does that exist amongst the players as well?
Yeah, I'd say Patrick Reed is delighted because he seems to have taken all the heat off him. Yeah, there's no doubt that DeChambeau can be a divisive character, and Koepka seems to have taken on the role as spokesman or spokesperson for everybody else. So I'm sure the rest of the guys are kind of sat there. Bryson is saying everything, or Brooks is saying everything that they're thinking. He's not that popular in the locker room, DeChambeau. I like him for the fact that he's a young kid that's come out and he's doing it his own way. And you really have to admire that. But I think Koepka is just trying to play mind games almost with himself. He seems, the difference between him and regular events and majors, although last week was his best ever ball striking in a regular event in Memphis, which really sets him up beautifully for this week. but he seems to have to play mind games with himself to get himself up for majors, and putting himself under pressure to say he's going to perform is what works well for him. He's taken on DeChambeau, which is great fun for us, but I think it's just another tool for him to get his mind into a place where he's going to demand a performance.
You mentioned there a moment ago, Gary, that perhaps the art of navigating your way around a tricky golf course is perhaps starting to die as a result of big hitters like Bryson DeChambeau. It's something that they picked up in commentary last night as well, saying that the art of Tiger Woods and trying to watch him navigate his way around a golf course like this is something that we need to cling on to and admire. How impressed were you with Tiger yesterday, or how surprised were you with the round that he put in?
I wasn't surprised because he's Tiger Woods, and the detail that he would go to prepare at home for the tournament is what he can do. He's always been a guy that hasn't played a huge amount of golf anyway. The only thing that worried me was, I don't know if you saw, but when he walked back into the scorers hut after his round, like, he really doesn't look physically in good shape. So you just have to wonder, where is his back at? What sort of painkillers is he on to just, stay upwardly mobile? But his golf is the complete opposite to what DeChambeau is doing. He's navigating his way around the golf course. He's always been the greatest mid-iron player that's probably ever played the game. That's his strength. As with every golfer, no matter what your level is, you have to try play to your strengths. Although, he drove the ball quite well yesterday, but I love watching Tiger play golf.
The issue with the back is going to be something that crops up throughout the weekend. Like, this isn't the Tiger Woods of 2009 at Torrey Pines, who can somehow get his way through. Like, he's pointed out this himself over the last couple of weeks, that it's tough getting old, it's tough aging, and perhaps this is, well, it's not perhaps, it's definitely going to be the toughest physical test he faces if that back flares up throughout the weekend. It seems that the conditions are going to be as important for Tiger Woods and his body as much as anybody else this weekend. If it stays warm, he's got a better chance of actually going the distance.
Yeah, or as Conor Moore would say, really tough. But it does. I mean, it's not really that cold over there, is it? Like, I think Port Rush was cold. It's not going to be, well, let's hope it's not going to be, damp and that wet seeping into it. I think that's more of a cold. Tiger is probably the opposite to Brooks. He likes to talk himself down. And
on that, Gary, is he just gaming everybody? Like, people are talking about Tiger Woods like he's 60. Like, the man is 44 years of age. I know he's had his very obvious and high-profile issues, but do you think is there an element of this that's kind of gaming everybody to say weak little Tiger?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look the way he plays, I mean, there's, it's, I guess you were almost talking there about the Torrey Pines in 09, like or was it 06? But the knee and the back are two totally different things.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can go around with the knee, the back. I was at the Masters in 2015, and I saw Tiger. He walked past me, forgot to say hello, but coming out of the clubhouse, and it was just astonishing how rigid he was when he was walking. Now that is the way he operates. He slows everything down when he's out playing. But I'd agree with you, Adrian. I think he's gaming him a little bit. He's out with Justin Thomas, who won last week, Rory, who's Rory, and he schooled the two boys yesterday. So they know the Tiger story. I'd love to see him hang around late on Sunday and be in the mix, because as we all know, when Tiger Woods is in contention, it's just box office.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about Rory. He steadied the ship yesterday after a fairly poor start. Was there any inkling, Gary, that he's starting to get back a little bit of his pre-lockdown form?
A little bit. I'm a big Rory fan. I'm very surprised the way he's been performing. It's understandable. I think Tiger mentioned it as well at Muirfield. It's bizarre for these guys who are used to so much hype and noise and play immediately from a Thursday morning with adrenaline. And that's that's not been the case. That's been the big issue for Rory. And then he's just gotten a bit flat. Now I haven't seen his wife travelling with him either. So, you know, there's not a lot of family. I know Shane Lowry's wife has gone home. You know, it's a tough gig. They're in a bubble. It's not the same normal stuff that they have week in, week out. They're not really going out for dinner together. You know, just all the... So the time off the golf course is probably hasn't suited him that much because he just doesn't see himself, although he battled really well yesterday. And I think that putt on his final green was an important putt just to shoot level par. We're just waiting for Rory to turn up. That's the big thing. He's capable of going crazy. I don't know if it's going to be this week, but certainly, you know, we've got this and 2 more majors. I'm still confident he's going to win a major this year.
Sorry, go on, Adrian.
I was just going to say about Shane Lowry as well. Gary, obviously, we didn't get to see a huge amount of him last night, but did see the piece with him afterwards, 2 under par, saying the course, I think his own words were, it's not playing easily, but ... It's a good thing to hear. He was saying that the practice rounds are a bit more challenging, but a good thing to hear that he's, even though he by his own admission, a little bit wayward, finding his way around the course.
Yeah, he was good. 2 under is a really good opening round. He'd only 1 bogey, which is, I think that's the key for Lowry for the next 3 rounds. If he's going to contend, it's trying to keep the mistakes off his card. He's always going to make some birdies. I think the guy that wins this week will possibly have the least amount of bogeys. It's just that kind of course, strategy will be hugely important. Justin Rose mentioned it when he hit in the rough and he didn't go for that chasey, choppy 5-wood. He's using his wedge game, which is Lowry's probably his strong suit. But Shane's in a good place. He's got Bo back in the bag last week and they finished 6th. And that will help him. As much as I was saying about Rory too, it'll help him off the course as well because they're kind of renting a house every week. They're hanging out together. You know, there's a lot of downtime, and especially in lockdown as they pretty much are. So I think Shane also has a friend over with him and just trying to keep things calm and normal. As we know with Lowry, he's a bit of a home bird. He's been in the States since February. So it's a long time on the road too. And I think people forget that. You know, it's not just a golfer that turns up on the first tee. There's a lot of other stuff going on. But Lowry seems to be in a good place. And I know this is a major and he wants to do well, but he's still trying to get in those FedEx playoffs as well. And he's outside that mark at the moment.
If you had to call it at this point, Gary, from what you've seen on the opening day, who's going to win the US PGA Championship?
Easy question. I wish I knew. I fancied Xander Schauffele strongly at the start of the week. And I guess I'm going to have to stick with him. He opened with 4 under par, which is a great start.
Gary, thanks a million for taking the call this morning. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, guys.
Gary Murphy there, golf pro at the K Club. Just a reminder that a fundraiser for Amy Lowry is taking place at the Ryder Cup course Palmer North at the K Club on Thursday the 27th of August. Gary Murphy, who you've just been hearing from, is playing one hand, one hole, where you can try and beat the pro on the 8th hole on the day. Check out Amy Lowry's GoFundMe page if you want to help. Time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
Let's start with the Irish Independent this morning. The FAI leading the way. FIFA alarmed and ready to intervene in the latest FAI spat. Quinn admits we don't look good as council members prepare to grill board over changes. So this is FIFA who may decide to get involved in the latest row at board level in the FAI after a major rupture between members of the board. We'll have more on that very shortly indeed. Niall Quinn will be joining us at around 9:20 this morning. A photograph of Shane Lowry there as well. Happy Lowry enjoys walk in Harding Park. And no guarantees for Sexton to remain captain, says Farrell. Johnny Sexton not guaranteed to resume his captaincy of the Ireland national team when Ireland's Six Nations campaign eventually resumes in October. Andy Farrell was out doing media yesterday. And then Donncha Boyle writing this morning that Connacht may use dome advantage in Championship. So this is the new state-of-the-art air dome, which you might have seen images of circulating on social media. It's a fairly spectacular structure. And John Prenty, the Connacht GAA chief, is open to the idea of using it to host championship games if restrictions on the number of people who can attend games remain. The €3 million air dome, which is the largest structure of its kind in the world, is expected to be fully operational by mid-September, with builders currently putting the final touches on the project. The Dome is supposed to carry 600 seats when it's fully operational. Of course, you wouldn't necessarily need that. I think that'll look great. We might come back to you on that one, Adrian, in just a moment. The idea of playing GAA games in the Dome. The Herald then leads with the same story. FIFA ready to step in. Nuclear option facing FAI if agreement can't be reached. And Sexton may not captain Ireland, writes David Kelly as well. And no fans better than no games. This is Dubs ace David Byrne on the GAA's return. Next up this morning is the Racing Post. On the front page, it is BHA reveals concerns over success rate of appeals against riding offences. McNamara times it right into Tyros. And on the back of the Racing Post is a preview of Manchester City against Real Madrid. The real deal. City ready to highlight their Champions League intent against former kings Real Madrid. It is an 8 o'clock kickoff this evening. The London Times this morning leads with the cricket. Pakistan on the charge. England facing uphill battle in first test after top order blown away by brilliant bowling. Bale didn't want to play then. This is a story we'll be covering with Graeme Souness. Zinedine Zidane has claimed that Gareth Bale asked to be left out of the Real Madrid squad to face Manchester City in the Champions League tonight. He kept cards close to his chest with regards to the reasoning for Gareth Bale's decision, wanted to keep their conversation private, but he does say that Gareth Bale requested not to be included in the squad for personal reasons. And deal closed for Aubameyang. Arsenal are hopeful that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is on the brink of signing a contract extension in what will be a huge boost to Mikel Arteta's plans for next season. The Guardian also leads with the cricket. England left clinging on after ordeal by Pakistan pace, and that's Zidane's story covered there as well. Zidane provides Bale fireworks before showdown with City. Inside the Guardian as well, Wolves bite, Nuno's men see off Olympiacos to make last 8 in Europe, and Tiger feet. Woods back in the swing at USPGA as McIlroy stays in touch. The Irish Mirror this morning is Mask of Sorrow. Pep has a feeling in his gut that City are ready to beat Madrid and march on to Euro glory, while Zizi reveals Bale asked to be left out of Real squad for Etihad clash. Meanwhile, Raúl roars Wolves into the last 8 is their headline on Wolves beating Olympiacos 1-0 on the night last night. And David Byrne there says the risks are worth taking. He acknowledges the risks of returning to intercounty football, but he's willing to take them. He says specifically the idea of playing in winter may be a little bit more dangerous than playing in summer. The Irish Daily Mail is We Can't Pay. That's the main headline. Intercounty restart too costly for Leitrim. This is an exclusive by Philip Lanigan with the Leitrim GAA chairman Enda Stenson, who says the county's financial situation is so stark that there simply isn't the money to fund the inter-county scene when it is due to start back next month. He says, I don't think we and a lot of other counties can afford to pay players their travelling expenses from the 14th of September because there is absolutely no form of fundraising. There is no way that we can pay the travelling expenses. We can't raise any money. There are no gates. If we are at least getting 400 or 500 at games, at least that would be something. But we don't have that now. So worrying times indeed for county boards who don't have a big amount of cash to play with at the moment. You've got Rory and Tiger playing catch-up, having a chat there before their round yesterday. And Sexton gets big vote of confidence, writes Rory Keane. Andy Farrell has backed Johnny Sexton to continue as Ireland's frontline out-half ahead of the new season. The Irish Daily Star reads, We're the real deal. Pep back City for Euro glory. Also on the FAI, Barrett hits back at board criticism, and it's the high of the Tiger is their headline on the golf with Rory and Tiger Woods wading through the rough yesterday. The Irish Sun leads with Arsenal. Peanuts is the headline. Oba on verge of signing new £39 million deal, and they'll raise a dosh by selling Maitland-Niles. Then a couple of stories surrounding tonight's game in the Champions League. Shock 1, they've called it. Garcia will walk out on Pep. And Shock 2, Bale asked not to play, claims Zidane. So that is the Irish Sun. A couple of other papers for you this morning. The Daily Telegraph, first of all, leads with the cricket. England on the rocks is the headline here. And Aubameyang on brink of Arsenal deal. Tiger stays in the hunt after a solid start at USPGA. RFU pulls plug on sevens, and Wolves book Sevilla date. That is the Daily Telegraph. And then finally this morning, the Irish Times leads with the golf. Rory Croak writing that McIlroy steadies himself following a shaky start level par round, leaves him 5 shots behind early leader Day. Meanwhile, trainer says DeChambeau muscle gain is not down to steroids, writes Brian Armand Graham. This is Greg Roskopf, a biomechanics specialist who works with the NFL's Denver Broncos, is keenly aware that outsiders might think that DeChambeau's abrupt muscle gain is a product of chemical enhancement, but insisted what may appear to outsiders like an overnight transformation was anything but. We've had a 3-year foundation, you're seeing the end result of it happening quick, but 2 years of preparation to get him to the point where he could make those changes is really why he's been able to make those changes as fast as he's been able to do it. So that is his take on that. And then Lowry's hopes intact after a safe opening. So golf all the way on the front of the Irish Times. Golf dominating proceedings really this morning, Adrian. Where do we want to start?
Well, sure. Listen, you mentioned the Connacht Dome. Why do they want to use it for a game?
Why not is my question. Why use a big stadium that is going to be totally empty when you can have a dome, an indoor facility that will at least have a bit of echo, that will have something that resembles a venue that is fit for the purpose of hosting something that doesn't involve any fans.
I'm going to say the clue is in what you've just said there. Why would they move? You just said, why would they? Sorry, you're making the case as to why they would move this game indoors, and all absolute sort of guidance, best practice over the last 5 months has been get outdoors.
It's a good point.
I don't understand it.
It's a good point. It's I was only thinking from an entertainment standpoint. Of course, there is a pandemic underway, which I'm not sure people realise.
You're the guy who only watches the golf for the Koepka DeChambeau rivalry. Listen, we get that. I've been looking at for that reason alone, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why they're suggesting this. Like when the entire country is talking about do as much as we can outside. I am really struggling to move past that point. But I was looking at the dimensions of it to see, you start to wonder, if you get somebody with a good enough bull toe on the mound, does this ball end up hitting off the roof? It seems like it's 26 metres high from what I can ascertain here. And GA goalpost wouldn't even be, I don't think, half that. So it seems like that aspect of it would be absolutely fine. But I don't get it.
I'm basing this on the fact that if you look at the NBA over the last few weeks, it just looks sensational. A purpose-built facility, essentially. Not a purpose-built facility entirely, but it looks like it belongs there. Like a lot of these sporting events just don't look right in empty stadiums. It just looks ridiculous, actually. And I've queried why haven't they actually tried out training grounds or something like that, where the facilities are clearly fantastic at Premier League level. You don't need this empty cavern to play a game. There's absolutely no advantage to home advantage having no fans there.
So are they, sorry, Eoin, are they saying specifically, because there's a lot of other facilities on this site, including training pitches and that sort of stuff, are they saying to hold it on the site, or were they specifically saying to hold it in the dome? Because that point makes absolute sense.
In the dome, Adrian. In the dome.
In the dome. Yeah. Still scratching my head.
Yeah. So the dome story here, to go back to it, so it'll carry 600 seats, as I've already mentioned, but it'll also carry a safety certificate that could see the venue cater for up to 10,000 supporters if further seating was installed. So perhaps it's a bit wider around the edges than we initially told. The thing that the person we need to get on this really is Nathan Murphy, because it's in Ballyhaunis, and it will be one of the great moments for Ballyhaunis.
Bacon, to give it its real postcode.
It's true, yeah. It just says, well, Ballyhaunis welcomes world's biggest aerodome thanks to Connacht ambition, writes the inside of the Irish Independent. It's not going to be open until September, but I don't know. Yeah, the point at its inside is probably a very, very good point.
It's the world's biggest. Did I read that somewhere? It's the world's biggest indoor playing dome.
Yeah, that's it.
Incredible, and also everything. None of what I'm saying this morning should diminish what they've done there. It's absolutely incredible, and by all accounts, it's fairly self-sustainable in terms of the running costs. I'm sure there's been a big outlay, and they've been at it for 5 or 6 years to actually get the thing up and running and all that. But it seems like it's very sustainable in terms of running costs, which is a crucial thing when you're obviously looking at an amateur sport like the GAA, who just don't have all that money on.
OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Where are we going to next, Adrian?
The Johnny Sexton story, probably worth mentioning. I haven't seen the specific quotes from Andy Farrell, but the gist of the story is that they're not sure whether they're going to continue with Sexton as Ireland captain when the rugby returns. And like there were obviously, he was in with us before and had mentioned that, if I'm correct, that at that time that they hadn't, himself and Andy Farrell hadn't necessarily had a huge conversation about this continuing for over a significant number of years. So it's maybe no great surprise, and it would have seemed to me to have been the very obvious thing that if they were looking at somebody like a Ryan to come in as a replacement on the track, that it's maybe a little bit young in his career as yet. He's really only had one Ireland captain anyway over his time in Rory Best, and maybe it'd be no harm to have a look at, you know, the leadership style. It made total sense for me in a way that I know it was questioned at the time. The appointment of Sexton made absolute sense, because there's always a rush to, you know, let's get the next person in now and they're going to be there for 4 years and they can fully bed in. Like, there's no need to do that. Like, bring Sexton in, let him be the bridge for the next person if that's the way it works. And if after a year everything is cooking along brilliantly and Sexton's body is holding up, and like, it's very easy to continue with that. So, yeah, I don't know. There's probably not much going on in the world of rugby. Maybe that's the big reason behind that story this morning.
Have you been impressed by him as a captain so far?
He himself has on the record about his own shortcomings, both before he sort of had his first games and then afterwards. And, you know, like, because there is that short fuse, and he was talking about having to work on his referee game, you know, like his interaction with the referee, and you can't always be shouting and roaring at the referee because it's short shrift. So there are, and he still has had elements of that to work on. Like, that's in his personality. He's got that Wayne Rooney style short fuse, hasn't he? Like, that's always been there. But yeah, other than that, like, I think I've always said it anyway. Look at that. I think Johnny Sexton should have been Ireland captain a long, long time ago. If I'm being 100% honest, I think he should have been given a long track of his career with the captaincy. I think he's absolute captain material. Sort of like does a lot of his talking on the pitch, which is exactly what you want. And is the right character for it. I think it's probably come a little late in his career, I would suggest. You know, for him to, you're pretty set in your ways at, what is he, 33, 34, you know, to totally change his mentality at this point. And there's obviously also people say that the out half is not necessarily the person. They have enough going on between trying to run the game, take the place kicks, and then obviously have to deal with that as well. So, but yeah, I think everybody assumes it's shortish term fix.
Let's have a look at the OTB Sports app this morning. You can get this now in the Google Play Store or in the App Store, depending on what operating system you're using. Here we go. Watch OTB AM. You got the Reaction GAA greats pay tribute to Sean Boylan after documentary. There could be a revolt, the split facing the FAI. On our podcast, then you've got the OTB Brief, which is live every morning. Good stuff on Shane Lowry, the FAI, and City versus Real Madrid in there. More stories there as well, including Roy Barrett responding to FAI director's cut at him. Live radio, by the way, you can catch us here on the radio tab every single morning on OTB AM, and more from the podcasts there as well, including Ken Doherty, who was in conversation with Will last night, and plenty on the FAI governance beside that. Right, it is 8:48 on this Friday morning, and we've got a brilliant hour of football lined up from 9 to 10. Interim Deputy CEO of the FAI, Niall Quinn, joins us at 9 o'clock. There's Champions League with Graeme Souness at 15:15, and then there's Deal or No Deal with Stephen Doyle after that to close out the show. First though, over the past month, with thanks to 20 by 20, we've teamed up with one lucky OTB listener, with Mayo and AFL star Sarah Rowe, for some guidance and mentorship around their own sports career. Sarah Delaney was our competition winner, and yesterday Adrian caught up with both Sarahs to hear how they've been getting on.
All right, as you can see, we've a great cast ready to go for our next item. Of course, it's the latest stop on our Off the Balls partnership with 20 by 20, and hooked around, of course, the latest chapter, the benefits of participation, and highlighting that being active and moving is a gift that you can only give yourselves. That's very much what we've been about over the last few weeks. And it's the opportunity that we've given to Sarah and the other Sarah. Thanks a million for joining us, guys, by the way. To get active over the last couple of weeks, and to give Sarah Delaney a bit of an opportunity to get some up close and personal time with Sarah Rowe and give some mentorship and encouragement, I think, was the general outlook on things, folks. You're welcome, as I said. And how have you been getting on, Sarah Delaney?
Really well, yeah. No, the last 3 weeks have been amazing, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity because it's been really beneficial so far.
What have you been up to over the last week?
I suppose my training's just been returning the last 3 weeks, and so I'm still waiting for matches, unfortunately. So we're still kind of training away and using Sarah's tips and tricks in training.
It's probably that you mentioned it. There's probably no better time to be engaged, Sarah Rowe, in those sort of conversations then, because like it's such an untypical time, and sports people and people looking to get out there and get active are kind of unsure about what they should be doing, when they should be doing it, how they should be doing. So maybe no better time to be talking to Sarah on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think she's always wants to be better, so like really listens and takes on board what you say as well. And I'm still figuring things out every day and learning myself, so it's nice to be able to pick someone else's brain and kind of see what works for her, and see I can always learn things from her as well, and have the way that she plays so many different sports at the same time as well. But I think it's such a time of uncertainty that the one thing you want to make sure is that you're doing all you can, because all you can really control at the moment. And I think Sarah's doing that very well, and she's really focusing on her training.
Yeah, the line isn't great there. Well, hopefully it'll come right over the next few minutes. So Sarah Delaney, I think you've been looking at is it mindset and sort of general perception of yourself over the last while, because I know that I think it's not necessarily just a truism in sport, but probably in life generally, that one tends to be more critical of oneself rather than any criticism of anybody else. So is that something you've been looking at then over the last week?
Yeah, definitely. I think the mindset was kind of the biggest thing I would struggle with. So I think Sarah's help has really, really been beneficial the last couple of weeks, and it's something I really needed to improve. So I'm just glad that it kind of came up, and I think it was the right time when everything's kind of coming back now. So it was a good time to get it done.
Would you be critical of yourself?
Yeah, I tend to be, and it's probably something that's not really, obviously not really good, and I tend to dwell on stuff as well if I was kind of making mistakes, which can really affect your game. So this mindset, the new mindset's really helping with that.
So
her dad said that he went to one of her training sessions, and he said that she was like a different animal. So that's how well she's been doing over the last few weeks. So that was the feedback from her dad anyway. But I think the thing with Sarah is that she takes everything on board, and like I was saying to her, to have them little conversations with yourself in your head, and you're the only person that can go the way you think. So we just kind of worked on a few things like that. And I suppose last week we looked at things like things that might be derailers for you, like things that might be maybe stirring you off track, and that could be to do with loads of things. That can be to do with the people in your life, that can be to do with bad influences, all that. So we kind of looked at all them kind of things as well, and looked at as well food is, I think, girls, we all have these habits of emotionally eating, or we have an emotional attachment to food, and sometimes girls don't see it as fuel. They think less is better, but especially with the amount of training Sarah's doing, and athletes in general, we need an awful lot of food in order to fuel our body. So we talked a little bit as well.
What do you like, Sarah, in terms of that? As I said at the top, I do think that everybody, myself definitely included, that you tend to talk yourself. Your own self-talk is the worst criticism you can possibly engage in. What do you like on that front?
Oh, it definitely happens. And we're all only human. That comes. But I think when you look at some of the best sports people and you speak to other people and you pick their brains, they just, there's we all have a head that can't do something, but sometimes that's not even our own belief. That's something that we've carried with us from maybe a comment that was said to us when we were a child, or some sort of comment that has been said to us over time that we've taken in and internalized. And I think that's the important thing to note, that you can kind of have a relationship with that and see it as two different people and say, no, actually, I'm not listening to you today. Less of that stuff, and just kind of get it out of your head. But it's to control it and challenge it straight away and not let it linger, because it just ends up being a constant cycle. And things like that, if you have a bad training session and you let your head continue to tell you that, I had a bad training session today, tomorrow is going to be the same, tomorrow is going to be the same, the next day, and it's so on and so forth, and it's a rippling effect of things that just keep going wrong for you. So if you can control that and nip it in the bud straight away and move on as quickly as possible. So the voices are going to come, they will be there, but it's how we control them.
Was that an easy thing for you, Sarah Delaney? Was that Sarah saying, a sort of a trigger for you, and was easy to get into, or does it take a little bit of time?
I suppose everything kind of takes time. It was definitely hard because I'm so used to kind of been really hard on myself and everything, and especially like when you're in that cycle, it's really hard to get out of it. But I think once I was, especially hearing it from Sarah, I think it was like a big help as well. I was like, right, like if she's using it, then like it must work. So I tried it, and it definitely does work. So I think it'll be something I'll be sticking to.
And did you find, like Sarah mentioned, the value in nutrition there as well? Have you found, because that, I mean, it does strike me that both of those things are, you can start to form habits pretty quickly, good habits pretty quickly, that can impact on the rest of your sport and the rest of your exercise. Have you found that with the nutrition side of things then as well?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's just new habits and just having to change your old ways. And it's slow at the start, but it definitely gets going and it becomes easier.
I can't believe we're at the end. Go on, Sarah, yeah.
Sorry, I think what we were saying there about, you know, healthy food and like fueling your body and all that stuff, like we can't really depend on our motivation to, you know, get us to make good choices every day, because our motivation is so high and low in general for all of us. It just goes up and down all the time. Whereas if we put good habits in place that we, you know, do every single day, it's not even a choice then, it's just what you do, and it just becomes normal and natural, and it's an automatic habit then. So I think that's an important point to note, is that you create good habits so that you don't even have to tap into your motivation, because we need our motivation in other areas when we do need to roll ourselves out of bed and get up to go training.
The 3 weeks have gone really quickly. I don't know if it sounds like, Sarah Delaney, they've been of some benefit to you, a lot of benefit by all accounts.
Oh yeah, 100%. The last 3 weeks have been amazing, and I think they're definitely going to show off in the future.
Has Sarah Rowe told you to delete her number now from your phone? Is that how this thing works?
No, I told Sarah Delaney to ring me or text me whenever she wanted, because we got on great over the last 3 weeks now. It was lovely to chat to her and catch up with her and kind of see where she is coming from. And I suppose look at her as well and think, you know, if I was that age, like what way was I thinking? Like I definitely wasn't as far advanced as Sarah is. So like, you know, she's already on a really good pathway, and I just couldn't believe that she was only 15. I was like, I thought I was talking to a 25-year-old, same age as myself. So we got on great.
We'll hopefully be reflecting on this in years to come, saying, geez, do you remember we had Sarah on and at that pivotal point in her career, and how much value it was? We've been delighted, I have to say, that to be a tiny part of this and to be able to facilitate it. So congrats to you both. And Sarah, I don't want to let you away, Sarah Rowe, but am I right to say the first senior club game for Kilmore Moy this weekend? Is that right?
Yeah, this Sunday.
Right. And unusual preparation, no doubt, I'm sure, over the last few weeks and months.
Unusual preparation, but also great preparation, because I've got up three the last time that I got to do that. So I think it's actually been really to have that kind of unity within the group. So I'm really looking forward to Sunday, and it's our first game of senior, so you know, it's a historic event for the club as well, and I'm looking forward to hopefully taking us all together forward and working hard.
Yeah, well, listen, keep the mindset right and the nutrition right, obviously, in the days and the lead into it. I'm sure you absolutely will. Been a pleasure catching up with you as well over the last few weeks. We'll be in contact again. Both Sarahs, thanks a million and good luck.
Thank you so much.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
There's a growing hostility towards cyclists. We're somehow seen as a nuisance, when in fact we're just people trying to get to work.
I've never ever gotten one bad word said to me about my sexuality, or from the opposition, or from, actually in one bad time, seriously, the girl was marking me so tightly, I was like, I have a girlfriend.
I'm not the person I was 10 years ago, and that doesn't worry me. I know I can play good enough golf.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon, only on Off the Ball.
Now that the UEFA Champions League has returned, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos to bring you another brilliant roadshow, but with a difference. Our very own Nathan Murphy will be joined by David Myler.
I just seen Kenny Dalglish out of the corner of my eye.
Chris Sutton, Stilian Petrov, Neil Lennon and Jason McAteer.
You could keep a squad of 22, 23 players happy.
For a very special remote roadshow. It can only be experienced by picking up our special code to view over Zoom, so keep your eyes peeled on how to win on our social channels. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back, get ready. See otbsports.com or search OTB Sports in the App Store for more. Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
So I know the likes of Griezmann's big into his fashion.
He wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998, if you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and they just get instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past, and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Okay, big day for the FAI with their council meeting later on, and we've got FAI Deputy Interim CEO Niall Quinn with us. Niall, you're very welcome. I know you don't have much time this morning, so we'll get straight into it. There's just a couple of things we want to touch on this morning. We want to get some clarity on the Memorandum of Understanding, which is obviously key to the bailout. You've spoken about this at length before. It's been spoken about all weekend for the last few months. And the big issue seems to have been the 6 and 6 issue that's been discussed. That's not budging at the moment. But one of the things that's come up this week is about the 10-year term limits, Niall, and this is where we want to start, about not allowing council members who've been there for longer than 10 years to stay on the council. Is it true that this is budging? Because it had been mentioned earlier in the week that it has the potential to at least be altered in some shape or form.
Yeah, I think if you bring yourself back to when the MOU was agreed at the end of January, it was signed off, and it then had to be presented to the constituents out there, the footballing family. Yes, there's a council meeting today and there's 78 council members, but there's 202 members of constituents throughout the land who represent football in this country, and ultimately they will decide whether they're happy with the way it is all panned out and how it's been drawn up and accepted by Roy Barrett in the first instance and the board then. And that's the kind of game that's in play. And just to kind of go to, your point where we're at right now, on the parts of it that are causing friction and concern, I think FIFA and UEFA since March have been very good in administering best practice and how they would look at how boards and committees, etc., are formed, and following that guideline, there is an interpretation that could be said that FIFA and UEFA said you don't want to lose good people either. So if conflicts aren't there, if good skill sets are there, that there may be a case for people who have stayed the term as per the MOU, that it could be looked at. That's just an interpretation, and it's something worth talking about. But there are other things as well. The 6 and 6 with the casting vote at this present time going to the independent chairman, that can change in 3.5 weeks' time if the constituents, the 202 people who ultimately will decide whether the MOU is accepted or not, if they are happy to revert that power of control back to the president, which effectively would be, as they call themselves, the football people. So I'm trying very hard to get a narrative out there that it should be 6 and 6, not 6v6. Nobody wants to take that sovereignty away. And if the electorate want to put the president in there for the casting vote, then I think it would make a big difference. To the individuals who feel hard done by having to leave, there may be scope there. I think this is about football coming together, showing some unity. First of all, enough confidence to be gleaned from government that they will, actually partake in this very necessary 62 million input that needs to be voted on. We need to reconcentrate ourselves and the sort of individual agendas that are being driven, the sort of narratives that have been in and around the place for the last few months. It all has to stop now. We all have to come together, and there is a way of going forward if people just stop looking at their own self-interest, all of us.
Yeah,
get to the point of unity.
Just to go back on that, then, basically the Memorandum of Understanding is malleable, Niall. If you're saying that these things are open to interpretation, the government doesn't see it that way, is what we understand. That they don't see this Memorandum of Understanding as malleable whatsoever. The idea that you can be flexible around 10-year term limits, have you cleared that with the government?
Yeah, so I think it's there for debate. The most important people to speak to in understanding how this works out at this point right now is the constituents out there who ultimately will decide whether we take this 62 million injection or not. And I think understanding from them over the last number of months of their concerns, and as an executive voicing, bring those concerns, I suppose, into conversations with departments board. It's not my field, I have to admit in this interview, but I am obviously privy to what's going on, being in the position I'm at. And by the hard line that existed, when the full extent of the problems of the last regime came out, just before Christmas, if you remember, nobody had any idea that the extent of the financial mess that we were in. I think what's happened in the meantime, the department have seen an attempt by the executive and the board to implement reform, governance reform, financial reform, and now electoral reform is the next piece on that. And I think anybody in a smart position, or trying to get into the smart position here, and say, okay, as a group, we really need to take this money in. We really need to think about grassroots, think about what football means in this country, think about coaches, players, volunteers, parents, and indeed the 200 full-time staff in Abbottstown, whose roles are at stake. Should this sort of narrative get tangled up, and we end up losing the ability to not just save the FAI, but to flourish in the future. And that's why the danger of the narrative going the way it's gone, the unprecedented sort of things that have happened, particularly, board members themselves coming out and having a go at the executive during the week publicly. I hope it's the end of the firing, and that we can put heads together now and actually seek a solution that works for everybody. And I think if just to go back to your point on it, if there are tweaks that work in terms of what would work for all parties, and we should be looked at. Life is always about talking, trying to get things through, not taking a stance and making accusations and having a tarnished association as opposed to one that comes together.
Just on that, is it not important to perhaps get an assurance from the government before you go to your constituents that the government are saying, yes, this huge sum of money is still yours if you make tweaks? Because the danger, of course, is that the constituents don't go for it and they don't go for the MOU. That's one part of it, I accept that. But the other part is that if you make tweaks to the Memorandum of Understanding, that the government simply won't give you the money. So have you got guarantees that if you make tweaks that they will still give the money?
Yeah, I think the interpretation and also the assistance of UEFA and FIFA since March in terms of determining what is acceptable to them, because they play a role here too. They took part. UEFA in particular took part in the MOU too. So sides that work together at that point, and I think in terms of how change was accepted or not in the last few months, and how the narrative became suddenly hostile, and the likes of Gary Owens and myself found ourselves, and we knew it was kind of coming in one way, that people weren't going to be comfortable with change, but the hostility that has existed has also led to do, has thrown a lot of things and put a lot of things into doubt. The fact that, it's kind of quite incredible today or yesterday that a politician would admit to have people on the board who are giving him information. There's so many things out there this has led to, that surely the best way to do it is sit in and talk about it and make sure that people are comfortable with it. I understand that people think it was. Sorry, go on.
Just on that question in relation to the 10-year rule and how malleable, I suppose, that the MOU is in relation to the government. From the outside looking in, it does look like a two fingers of the government if you're saying that this thing that we agreed on the basis of bringing in the 60 million plus is now malleable. And the indications that we have are that from the government's point of view, that's not the case.
It's based on interpretation, and I do think government wouldn't like us to lose really good skill sets on the basis that a discussion that would mean that there could be some shape or form that these people who have offered good things in the past and who have good skill sets and who are not conflicted, that might be able to help in football in the future.
Does that mean that yourself and Gary Owens then are for having a situation where there's board members are allowed serve for more than 10 years?
I would say that my view on that is that we have to show unity and come together, and if there's a skill set there that can help the association going forward, that shunning it for the sake of drawing up a rule to remove people who didn't have those skill sets It can all be looked at. Remember, this is probably more for the 200.
Just on that, then you're saying yes. You're firmly saying that is the case. We think, which goes against most best governance practice, that 10 years is seen actually.
Just to be clear, how that is interpreted is open to debate, and I would like that debate to happen so that people can calm down from where everybody is and show unity together. Yeah. If we keep going through this narrative that's out there, the us and them narrative, the people are fed up. They are getting fed up out there, and there is so much at stake here that we have to come together. And if it means going to the Department of Sport and saying, look, out of these people who have to go here, some want to try and stay. Here's their skill sets. Can we bring that in? What is wrong with that in asking the question and getting people, to understand that this has all been done in the best interest of the game going forward? The people are fed up. They're fed up in the first instance. They're horrified by what went on in the past. In the last 6 months, as the executive came in, having an MOU there to be agreed at a later date with the EGM, trying to make sense of the association, trying to put it back on a good footing. We've done everything right that we can in this period of time, and now we find ourselves locked in a very public split ahead of one of the most crucial votes, I would say, of any sporting organisation ever in this country's history. So it's about finding a way to and discover, is unity possible? Can we get this vote through? And then can we, as an association, and by that I mean all of the constituents, can we then make the game better and make decisions like giving the power of the casting vote back to the president? Nobody has issues with this if that's what the people want. And we, I suppose, let's be serious. There are 62 million very important reasons why this vote has to go through, and we owe it. We owe it to grassroots. We owe it to coaches. We owe it to volunteers, players, and we owe it to our full-time staff in Abbottstown, the ones who have worked through this mess brilliantly, despite being subdued. We owe it to them to find a way to get the game in as brilliant a shape as we can, and that starts with making sure we take this money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the idea of asking the question around this 10-year rule is one thing, but it seems that the government have already given the answer to that question. Like Catherine Martin and her department have come out and said that they will not reopen for discussion any part of the Memorandum of Understanding agreed by the previous government. It seems that there won't be any move for any room for manoeuvre here at all, Niall.
Well, I think you'll find that how that is interpreted based on the advice and the input from UEFA and FIFA, that our constituents are absolutely entitled to ask the question, is that cast in stone, and have a good view on this as to whether this is the appropriate way to go forward or not. Because if you're losing good skill sets, it's obviously something that you want to look at and see how best to accommodate them. There might be other ways of going forward. There's been a lack of discussion here. People think that the 6v6, it's this hysteria that came out there, that the sovereignty is at stake. That's not the way at all. That's not the way the independents are thinking. That's not the way the executive is thinking. Look, I think the bigger issue here, the much bigger issue here, is that control of a 6-6 vote and a casting vote going back to the football directors, as they're called. That, I think, is an issue that should negate fears amongst the constituents out there who are worried about sovereignty.
You're in a tough position, Niall, because like you've outlined it yourself, that you almost have UEFA and FIFA on one side and then the Irish government on the other side, and both of them obviously are coming with pots of money to try and help save the FAI. It's an unenviable position in many ways. It sounds like from everything you're saying that, and I know that the UEFA and FIFA have been out in the last 24 hours to say that. So one source was saying that they're concerned about the direction that this has taken, having previously given your backing. I don't think
that's true. We didn't get that from UEFA or FIFA. They're firmly 100% behind the process.
Okay. From the outside looking in, when you strip all this back, it's very difficult for us to know exactly what's going on, who's right, who's wrong. You've already spoken about the split there. I know that you've mentioned about a narrative. Gary Owens earlier in the week was talking about a news cycle. There's clearly a lack of harmony, a lack of maybe common purpose is not quite right, but certainly a lack of unity that you're talking about. Is this entire FAI project now getting away from yourself and Gary Owens?
No, I think the vote on the 31st of August will determine how that project, as you call it, ends up, and how the future can be seen for football in this country. It's a hugely important time, and what I'm saying to you is that these narratives are deflecting from where the real concentration should be. This isn't about Gary Owens and Niall Quinn's project. This is about making sure that the association is saved, that there is good governance, financial reform, corporate governance, and other new procedures in place that give people confidence that the association can go forward. That's what this is about. And while there has been sticks and stones thrown, at the executive and at times at the independents, questioning a lot of stuff that's gone on. It's a very emotive subject. We get it, but can we suddenly stop and take one step backwards, get our heads all out of our own backsides, and look at the greater issue of what unity can bring to the 31st of August? And that's the point now. People are fed up now. All this narrative agendas flying, propaganda, call it what you want, over the last few months. Okay, I think we have to grow up. Football has to grow up now. All of us, all of the stakeholders, and do what's best for football and come to a conclusion that will see the game flourish in the future. Putting individual and self-interests in play before saving the association is wrong, and I wouldn't care less about my project if the right thing happens and we save the 200 jobs in Abbottstown and grassroots, etc., can go forward with belief and confidence, as would perhaps sponsors, etc., that this thing has been done right. It's time now for unity.
Well, let's address that self-interest that you mentioned there. Who in particular are acting in self-interest here? Is it the people, the 8 signatories of the statement 2 nights ago that might be in danger of losing their own jobs were we to implement the Memorandum of Understanding? Is that who you're referring to here?
I think all sides have their own agenda here. Even Gary and I have our agenda to drive through what we believe is the correct day-to-day approach in terms of the pillars that needed to be brought into the association. There are some who are resisting that. Ultimately, I think we should be all working together to find a place of comfort. And until we get over that, and until we can, say for sure that the association is going forward, it's going to be difficult. In the first instance, let's park the self-interest, let's park the worries and fears that people have, and let's do enough to make sure that the association is obviously financially sound, because it hasn't rejected the benefits that the MOU brings if they sign it off, the 202 members on the 31st of August. That's the near-term need right now, and that's all that we should be concentrating on. The blame game, giving out about other people and naming people, that does nothing. And particularly at this time, the time for all that narrative is over. The time for the annoyance. We got to be strong. We got to be brave, and we got to find a way collectively that football, wins at the end of the day on the 31st of August.
Yeah, like you mentioned propaganda there. It was a fairly serious thing in that statement 2 nights ago that the board allegedly signed off on a Memorandum of Understanding before it was agreed back in January. Is that true?
Well, did you see the press releases that the board made the afternoon of the signing of the MOU and the president as well? You saw them press releases.
Yes, yeah.
So I think if you look at that, I think it answers the question.
Can I ask you one last one on the funding then, on the COVID payments, or not the COVID payments, but the COVID grant that's supposed to be handed out by Sport Ireland at some point this year, up to €40 million for the 3 main organisations, for the FAI, the IRFU and the GAA. Is your share of that in the FAI dependent on the MOU being agreed as well?
Yeah, we're led to believe that is accurate.
So that kind of inflates the stakes over the next little while as well. How confident are you, Niall, of this MOU being accepted, passing through? It's a bit of a civil war underway.
Yeah, I think it just needs to all calm down, and people need to do what's best for it. How confident am I doing it? I do believe the members will do the right thing here and satisfy government, accept the MOU as it is, and work together then, with whoever the executive is at that point going forward, whoever the elected board is, and whoever the independent directors are. This is not hard when you break it down and step back from the emotion and the hysteria and the outside into the political plays that have been going on. It just doesn't read well. We're doing ourselves no favours. We feel that. We're having very strong conversations on potential sponsorships of an association that badly needs this. We need to return to the corporate world. Trust needs to be brought in, and every day we take part in this split, as we called it there, and termed it. It's moving us away from that. So time to shake ourselves, come together, and do what's best for Irish football.
Niall Quinn, thanks a million for taking the call.
Thank you.
FAI Interim Deputy CEO Niall Quinn there with us. It is 19 minutes past 9 on this Friday morning. Let's just tell you about the Liverpool jersey competition, because we are delighted to say that we've got a brilliant prize to give away for Liverpool fans this morning on OTB AM, as Nike Football have released their 2020-21 Liverpool FC home kit for the new season. The new kit is available to pre-order in store and online right now, and every morning this week on OTB AM we've been giving you the chance to win a €100 voucher for the LFC store in the ILAC Centre in Henry Street, Dublin. There are 3 ways of entering the competition this morning to be in with a chance of winning. First of all, you can share the show where you're watching and tag at Off The Ball. You can tweet or just retweet this morning's OTB AM and tag at Off The Ball as well. Or better still, WhatsApp us a screen grab of how you're watching or listening to the show. You can get us at 0879 180 180. Right, Adrian is still with us this morning. We're going to be getting to Graeme Souness in just a moment. What's your gut instinct on how precarious a situation Manchester City are in, Adrian? We'll get Graeme's take on this in just a moment.
In terms of this fixture, or are you?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point I was going to put to you. But do you know what? We don't actually need to put it to you, Adrian, because we got Graeme Souness on the line. Graeme, a very good morning.
Good morning.
Let's kick things off with Manchester City against Real Madrid. It certainly feels to me that Manchester City fans were probably been sitting a little easier had this second leg happened before lockdown. Things have changed a bit since then, not least how good Real Madrid have been since the lockdown.
Yeah, they'll be playing with their tails up because of the Liga. And confidence, because everyone's different, but confidence generally gives players such a boost. The problem for them is they're missing the talisman in defence, Ramos. I fancy City. City have their own issues defensively, but I think for Ramos missing for Real Madrid, I think that makes, and giving City a head in the thighs. So I think you got to fancy City there.
It feels like a really phenomenal chance for City to get over the line this year, Graeme. They've made no secret about the fact that this is the holy grail for them over the last few years.
Yeah, they've won the league. They've won the Premier League. So this is the one that they crave. Me personally, I think it says more about you if you win the Premier League than the Champions League. So, but there right now, this is a number one target because they've never done it. It's the most glamorous cup you can win. So all the attention will be, especially the way the format is now. Yeah, they'll want to win it desperately, but so do Bayern Munich. So does everyone left in it. Bayern Munich say they think they've got a God-given right to do well in this competition. There'll be no pushover. Real Madrid will fall into that category as well. They've won it 13 times, so they think they've got a God-given right as well. But City have a great chance. But it's just, we know that City are vulnerable at times. The problems had at the back still exist. That's not going to change. I worry for them if Aguero is not playing, because I think he is a couple of levels above Jesus that steps in for him. So I think they'll do it, but you just never know with Real Madrid. They're capable of going there and digging in, and they've got their own flair players. Benzema's on fire, so it's a hard one to call. But I'm edging for City with the advantage they have.
Has there been
De Bruyne, of course?
Sorry, Graeme. Has there been a common theme over the last few years as to why Manchester City have tended to fall flat in the knockout stages of the Champions League?
Well, you can't say they've fallen flat. Last year against Tottenham, they were just so unlucky. The goal that was allowed, Raheem Sterling, the goal that was disallowed, and then you got the big, Spanish centre forwards whose goal was allowed to stand, and after a long basic decision by VAR, they decided to give it. So I think City look back and they were unlucky. Again, and the year before, I think they were lucky against Liverpool. So they might feel it's their year. It's not that falling flat, it's just on the night, and it can happen. It can happen. Things don't go for you. The referee makes a mistake. People at VAR make a mistake, which isn't unusual. So, it's just what can happen on any given night. But anyway, when you look at the teams that are in it, there's, come back. I always play the German team. They're so bloody consistent and dogged, and if they can get ahead of you, they can keep you there. Keep you under the heel. So I've got a sneaky feeling for Bayern. They're another team. I've wondered they'll end up winning their league with a bit to spare. They'll take some stopping as well because they'll be playing with their tails up.
Yeah, just on the City thing, Graeme, like you've mentioned some of the frailties that they have there. You've mentioned defensively, obviously, and they've looked to address some of them already ahead of next season. Obviously, Arsenal found a way to beat City in the Cup not that long ago, and like some pretty, big things that came out of that, obviously putting the squeeze on the ball. You mentioned some of those players like De Bruyne and Gundogan and putting pressure on those, and maybe the same with Silva. Is there something, a team like Madrid who have all the players and all the class in the world to be able to repeat that, is it as simple as a copy and paste job there? Is that the secret?
No. You go back a couple weeks before that, Arsenal played them in the league, tried to play the same way, and got beat convincingly. They just had a good day, and City had maybe a few players that were having an off day, and that can happen in a one-off game. There's no set plan. You can't come up with a set plan and say, this is how we're going to beat City every single time we play them, because every single game is different. The game I saw Arsenal play against them, they tried to take City on at their own game, and they came unstuck, which is a high press, win the ball throughout the field. But on any given day it could work, but you can't say it's going to work every time. So I think, Arsenal had a particularly good day against Chelsea, although Chelsea contributed to their own downfall. City are a team that's filled with some really world-class players. No mistake about it. And on any given day, they could be anyone out there, convincingly. They're that good. That's whether that's going to happen tonight, and if they get through tonight in the next few games they're going to play. Don't write City out of it, but I think a big thing is for Aguero to be back in the ranks.
Yeah, and when the Aguero day is done for Manchester City, what a job it is in terms of finding a replacement. You've mentioned the drop down to Jesus as quite significant. David Silva leaves the club this summer, as has been spoken about quite a bit. It seems that there's a bit of work to do off the pitch this summer, Graeme, in terms of...
I believe they were caught last year. I think, that's what I believe, whether I'm right or wrong. I had someone who's genuine and all. I think company... I think they committed the money, big money, 65 million for Cancelo early on. They were committed. So they've spent the money on defence. And then, because he loves his fullbacks, doesn't he? He sees them as such a bit of the game going forward. And I think the priority, and it's very easy to act, but I think it was obvious. Vincent Kompany was giving you 12 to 15 games a season. So you're thinking, even if he stays, I've got to get another centre-back, because you've got Otamendi. We know what he is about hit or miss. John Stone, he's not sure about Laporta and his Vincent Kompany. So to go out and spend 65 million, and it doesn't look like he fancies him now a year in, I think it's maybe a mistake. So I think you go with the priority. It should have been a centre half. Anyway, he buys him or he commits to him, and then Vincent Kompany says, I'm off. I think that might have caught them by surprise. So now he's looking at the situation. He must have been thinking, what is the very worst thing that happened to me this season in the back? That would be my best defender going out for a lengthy period of time. And that's exactly what happened. And that happens to you in management. You think the gods are conspiring against you. So Laporta goes out for a period of time, and you get the season and a half. They drop Fernandinho back in there, and I think, Rodri might be Fernandinho's class one day. I very much doubt it. But when they took Fernandinho, even at 35, out the middle, they lost something. And you had both at the back, but it wasn't Kompany and Laporte at their best. So I think it's very obvious to look at City and say this is where the problems last year. I think they will address it. They've just got a young Spanish centre, I think. They will address it, but can we drag Liverpool into this? I know it's Champions League something to talk about. But Liverpool are still going to be the team to beat next year.
Yeah, we could drag them in all day long at the minute, Greg. There's no debate on that. One of the most interesting things is obviously the battle on the sideline as well, right? And I think two lads who it seems they don't have a huge record against each other necessarily as managers, but have an affection toward each other and all that kind of thing. If you were investing in the club tomorrow, which one would you go for?
I don't know. I think Zinedine, first time round, people saying, it's an easy job because he's got all these players. He had a fantastic record in this competition. Pep's. What can you say about Pep? He's obviously special as well. But his critics would say, how difficult was it to win the league at Barcelona? How difficult was it to win the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich? And how difficult would it have been to win the league with City, given that Bayern dominated their league, and City had been regular winners a couple of times prior to them arriving at City. So, for him, even for Pep, who's won this competition with Barcelona, he'll want to win it. He'll want to get that monkey off his back. Where people are now suggesting, well, he needs to win it. It won't be easy. It won't be easy for anyone. You've got the best teams in Europe left in the competition with the very best one. That's Liverpool.
If you were setting up that team tomorrow, Graeme, Gareth Bale might be a conversation that you might be able to have, given sort of his how he's kicking back a little bit at the minute. Zidane has said he obviously hasn't travelled for this game; it's highly documented, and Zidane is saying it's for personal reasons and he doesn't want to go into the reasons behind it. But what we definitely know is that here's a player who's available, and for whatever reason is there's a lot of antics going on up in the stands. He's making his binocular signs. He's a player who should be in the form of his life, Graeme, at that age, one of the best players on the planet, and is flitting away his playing days.
Well, I'm not sure he's one of the best players on the planet. He's talented, seems to get lots of injuries, doesn't play enough games, and I think Zidane made his mind up early. He doesn't touch it. And I think the top and bottom of the story is he's getting that much money there, and the lifestyle suits him, that he's prepared to dig his heels in and take the flack, which he must be getting lots of from the supporters, just to stick it out and say, if you want me to go, pay me what's left on my contract, and I'll go. And I would imagine it's simply down to money. And I think it's good, it's happened a fortnight ago, it's been on for months. The best part of a year now, maybe is it a year? Must be a year. So he's taking his heels in. He won't pay in if he's going to leave. Real Madrid will say not a chance, and they're loggerheads over it. It'll be about money. But Zinedine made it plain very, very early on. I think he won in the previous spot because he didn't fancy him. I know that might sound crazy to Liverpool supporters. I think there's something about him that Zinedine, there's obviously something about him that Zinedine doesn't like.
Do you think, Graeme, that there is a way for a professional footballer who is so chilled out and relaxed, like Gareth Bale at the moment, happy to take his paycheck, to actually make it back to an extremely high level? Do you lose something? Do you lose the competitive edge, and is it hard to get it back at that point?
Well, he's not the first one to find himself in this situation. I couldn't answer that, because I know that I couldn't do it. I mean, I just want to play. And for him, I think that might tell you a great deal about Gareth Bale, and there's something there that Zinedine sees that he doesn't like. There's something maybe in that, at the top and bottom of it, someone's prepared just to sit there, take the money, take the flack from the supporters, and just be happy not to play. When you stop playing, you'll never. This is the standard answer you get from any player who's been a professional footballer. It goes too quickly. It's over in a flash. You get to marry it. It goes too quickly. I mean, you'd love to go and live it all again, the good and the bad. And he will think that one day, because what he touched on it. This is the best player, hardly the best years of his playing career. This is when he should be at his peak. He's got all the ability in the world, and I don't know. It's not something I could ever. It's not a road I could go down where you're just happy to sit there and take the money.
Do you think he's going to?
Because he is so talented. You think if he could sit down in front, or his agent sits down in front of Zidane, right? What is it you want me to do? Because I want to be here and I want to be in the team. What is it I'm not doing that you're not? That I have to do to make you happy that you're going to play me every week. That I'm going to be undroppable. I wonder that conversation takes place, because these are the years he can never get back. And he'll hit himself for it further down the road.
Yeah, I was just about to ask it. It does seem that the way you're talking, Gareth Bale could find himself in a position 10 years' time and really regret these moments.
Yeah, so he wins a couple of European Cups and some La Ligas. He ends up, instead of playing 600 games in his career, he ends up playing with half of that. There's no doubt he's got. You think of the goals he's capable of scoring, his quality, his speed, his power. But there's something in his attitude, and it has to be his attitude, that the manager, who's one of the greats of all time. I mean, I'm not sure, not too many managers and maybe only these two could get Jurgen now could take their bosses. I'm not going to play him. I'm not going to play him. And they would be screaming at him, but you're devaluing him. He's worth X, and if you don't play him, he's only worth Y. So I think there's very few managers. I can only think of two that get away with that.
Could I just ask you then on Zidane, why has he been such a success? It seems that sometimes there's a little bit of confusion around Zidane. Like, obviously he's a legend in that dressing room, and the dressing room is stacked with talent. So there are two very obvious reasons. But is there anything else that you've spotted that has made him the success that he has been as a manager?
Well, I think the single biggest reason this year alone, forget what's happened in the past, is the standards that Barca failed to get to. I mean, Barca have been a shadow of their team. So it's made life a wee bit easier after the return. They sort of found another level, Madrid. But Madrid is a great football club. It's not the greatest one out there with the greatest history, and they've got some great players still. But it's not like the Real Madrid from 5 years ago. And I think that when you ask me what Zidane has, he will have the respect of everyone in the dressing room. He obviously knows the club inside out. He'll know the game inside out, and he'll have a way of expressing that, and he's getting his thoughts over that players buy into. So everything about him, everything he's ever done in football is just World Cup winner when he gets sent off there. That doesn't happen to anyone. But he's one of the all-time greats. You've got to put him in the top five, in my opinion, the top five that's ever kicked the ball. I mean, he's one of the players I would have paid money just to watch him. No one else on a football pitch. So everything about him, he's successful. Whatever he does, he's successful. And that tells you it's not just luck. It's not happened over 1 season, 2 seasons. He just whenever he does a job, he's successful. But I think this year, life's been made a wee bit easier for him because of the form that some of the Barcelona players have been in. Because it's only the only real challenge there. Atletico have dropped off the pace a bit.
From this vantage point, Graeme, who's winning the Champions League in your view?
Can't tell you. I think on any given night, as I've said already, any given night, any of them could have a special night. And now it goes to the knockout competition especially. You know, where if you have a bad night, you're toast. You're out the door. So it's a really hard one to call. But I think City have a great chance. I think they will beat Real Madrid tonight. Or do enough to get through tonight. But beyond that, you think of Barcelona, if they all have a good night, and the little fella they've got as a very good night, then they can be anyone. Take Messi out of it, and you're not giving them a chance for me. Forget it. And then Bayern Munich will be playing with their tails up, for sure. Atletico Madrid, as we saw against Liverpool, can be dogged and determined and frustrate teams to play against. It would nick it. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going... I think between City, Madrid, I know I'm tipping City to go through. If they didn't, then Real Madrid is a real favourite. But I don't see them getting past tonight because the damage is done in the first game. They have to chase it, and they won't like doing that tonight. And that should suit City, but you can't write them off because of the history in this competition. So I'm long-winded way. Okay, I'll try shorter. City, Madrid, or Bayern Munich. I don't see PSG. I think they'll come up short again.
And
although they've got players, I think they'll come up short again.
Right. And Cristiano Ronaldo and Juventus fans will be having a word as well. Listen, Graeme Souness, thanks a million for taking the call this morning. Really appreciate it.
No, it's always a pleasure, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks, Greg.
Graeme Souness there on the line. It's going to be quite the few weeks of football. Like we thought, Adrian, that the Premier League, when that was done, it was like, okay, chill out from football for a little while. It goes to a whole new level, and as he says there, the whole one-legged affairs. You're toast if you lose a game and you're out. That just adds to the whole stakes from the quarterfinals. Right, UEFA Champions League nights in are back, and to celebrate it, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos. And we are announcing a special remote roadshow live on August the 20th, as well as a special private video call with David Myler for 5 lucky winners. Now, not only do you get to ask the questions, you'll also land a Pepsi Max and Doritos hamper. For your chance to win, you can win tickets to either of these amazing experiences. You can keep an eye on the OTB social channels over the next week, or search OTB Sports in the App Store. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back. Get ready. Stephen Doyle joins us next First, though, let's hear from Ken Doherty, who joined Will on last night's OTB, and you can, of course, catch the full podcast on the OTB Sports app. And here is Ken on the lessons he has learned.
Well, I tell you, when I'll be 51 now, not long away next month. But if I was playing a 20-year-old Ken Doherty, I'd like to whisper in his ear, I know that, and give him a few pointers along the way. But now the Ken Doherty at 20 would give the Ken Doherty at 50 probably about 21 point start, I'd say.
Go on. What were the pointers you'd give to yourself then?
I'd say, I don't know where to start. How long have we got?
Look, I'm sure it's not that long of a list now, in fairness, Ken.
I'd just say, like, keep enjoying the game, keep practicing hard. What I'd say to the young kids coming through, work hard, and keep the practice, keep the love for the game, and also watch the other players. Watch a lot of the likes of the O'Sullivans and the Higginses and the Williamses, and all the great players, because when I was a kid at 20, I wish I had watched a lot more snooker on TV and listened to the guys, because you can learn so much from watching it. You think you know it all when you're 20, that you go in the practice table and you played a lot of tournaments. I didn't watch a lot of snooker on TV when I was that age, because I thought I'd seen it all, and I didn't want to be sort of, watching what other players did. But I wish I did, because you can learn so much from watching, and how they make breaks and how they go about making breaks and the tactical side. And I think that's what I would do, that's what I would say to a young sort of Ken Doherty. And also, don't be afraid to elaborate. Talk to sports psychologists, talk to coaches a bit more, and try and, even improve on your technique as best way as you can. To get any little edge that you can, well, it's always a plus, Dennis Taylor's just walked into the rim. I wish I had to talk to him for many, many years over the years. I could have learned an awful lot more.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like, I walked into a circus.
Adrian Barry.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Fair play to you. For viewers, we are on a deal or no deal section. Stephen Doyle is with us. Stephen, come on in.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, lads.
What's happening, Steve-O?
Not a huge amount this morning now, just winding down for the weekend, hopefully, Adrian. But does seem to be a lot of business or prospective business deals going through in the football market anyway over the next few weeks.
Funny you should mention that, Steve-O. Manchester United first port of call here, right? So Jesse Lingard obviously is a subject now for conversation. It has been over the last little while. His time at United is done, it seems. And the jury's been out on this guy for a number of years as to whether he's Manchester United level. I think we can all agree now that he's not. What sort of standard is he, though?
Yeah, you think when you look through that United team and the attacking options that they have, and of course if Jadon Sancho does come, which we all think he will, after Edward Woodward tries to bring Borussia Dortmund down by $1 million or $2 here and there before actually paying $5 million over the asking price. When you compare Jesse Lingard to the class of Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial, Jadon Sancho himself, is he at that level? No, he's not. So it's clear that he's on his way out. And I think there was, after he was substituted in the game against LASK after scoring that goal, he didn't look too happy. Solskjaer has said he's willing to, well, apparently the Guardian are reporting that he's willing to listen to offers for him now at this stage. So he scored in back-to-back games. Like, he'd gone 29 matches without a goal or assist. He scored in back-to-back games against Leicester and LASK. So he's still got something there. He's obviously had a terrible time with injuries and confidence as well. And I just wonder, I think it's going to be good for him, because sometimes players like Jesse Lingard, when you're at one of the best clubs in the world like Manchester United, the microscope is on you all the time and you have to produce your best week in, week out. And that's an awful lot of pressure. And especially if a guy, and we know he's been open about having some family issues and personal issues that he's had to deal with over the last season or two, when you've got that all on top of you as well, it's really hard for a young. He's only 27. Like, I know 27, he's an adult male, but he's still a young enough guy and he's got an awful lot to deal with. So perhaps getting out of that goldfish bowl of Old Trafford and going to another club would be just the tonic for him. So I think, maybe a club like Leeds United West Brom or so I forgot who's won the Fulham, who are coming up from the Championship for next season. He's a player maybe they could look at because he's got so much Premier League experience. He's been at United now for several seasons. And then you're looking at, I suppose, clubs who are maybe going to be sitting around mid-table, top 10, maybe even the likes of Burnley, someone like that, where his valuable experience will bring an awful lot to a club that is trying to either consolidate their position in the Premier League or to beat off relegation.
I agree that he should go to one of the lesser clubs on Arsenal.
Was he not born to play for Everton, Steve-O? Is that not why Jesse Lingard went into football in the first place?
As Adrian's
match made in heaven.
Maybe someone say he's born to play for Arsenal as well.
Absolutely, Steve-O. Don't be deflected away from the topic here by this Everton nonsense.
The Danny Welbeck path was well carved out. He became a bit of a cult hero at Arsenal and then moved his way onwards and upwards to Watford. Maybe Arsenal are at Everton's level, and that's the thing at the moment. Like there's a scale of banter clubs in the Premier League, and Arsenal are still below Everton at this level, I think. And
the rating from both of you here of Jesse Lingard at this stage of his career making a success of things.
He might be Jesse Langer if he doesn't keep his performances up. But
out of 10, Jesse Lingard finishing his career in 3 years' time and feeling that it's been a success.
Oof, well, that's a bit harsh.
That is very harsh. Also, it's very relative.
Well, listen, Graeme Souness just told us that Gareth Bale was not one of the best players on the planet. So I'm feeling free that I can run with that.
Well, hang on a minute. Well, it depends what sport you're talking about here. Was he talking about football or golf?
Jesse Lingard, his career has already been a success. Like, what have you done with your life? Jesse Lingard managed to play for Manchester United.
You're not comparing a professional footballer to me. That's an unfair comparison. I'm talking about accepting that. Generally, it's been unbelievably successful. But, as a professional footballer who's played for one of the, if not the biggest club in the world, you couldn't, in that context, say that he's been a great success so far. So you understand the point. Out of 10.
I would say out of 10, for him to go to either one of the three new Premier League clubs or else another club who will be traditionally in the bottom half, I'd say it's a 9 out of 10.
Oof.
God, to be a success for them, I think that it's a high probability as well. But the wider question of success from this point, he probably needs to go to a better team than that, I think, and needs to go. I don't think this is going to happen, by the way, but I think he needs to go to a Wolves or a Leicester and succeed at that level and actually be challenging them, finishing in the top 6 as a starter. As I say, I don't think that's going to happen. But if he pulled that off, then that would be a successful next few years until he gets into his 30s, you would have thought. The chances of it happening. I'm going to go for a 7 here and kind of cop out because I actually don't really see what Steve-O was saying in terms of him going to a bottom club. I actually see him going to Everton or an Everton level club, and I don't see them reaching top 5, top 6, and for that reason it won't be viewed as a success. So 7.
I think you've both been extraordinarily generous. Fair play to you this morning. We mentioned Arsenal. Aubameyang, but we believe is close to signing a new 3-year deal, and obviously Willian is coming in from Chelsea as well. So, in terms of what those players will, I suppose, add and continue to add in Aubameyang's case for Arsenal, we're talking about this ethereal notion of success, but let's assume that in Arsenal context, that's the top 4. Chances of that with those couple of moves. Go to you first one on that own out of 10 next season.
The Aubameyang to stay at the club, I would give that a 9 out of 10 at this point. It looks like it's a fairly definite thing to happen. The Willian thing is a little bit more complicated, I would have thought. It did seem that it was far more certain on Sunday or Monday that this thing was going to happen. I'd put this under the 7 category as well. I think it's dwindling a little bit over recent days. I don't know, the Aubameyang thing is a necessary step for them to hold on to him. It's kind of a sad indictment of where we're at, that is a necessary step to pay anybody $250k a week in football, given they've laid off 55 staff, but it needs to be done. You can question the Ozil thing far more than that for sure, and Aubameyang, relatively speaking, in global terms, deserves that money, relatively speaking. Willian, does he deserve 100,000 quid a week playing for Arsenal at the age that he is as a 31-year-old? No. And that's why I'm giving that a lower legitimacy rating.
Steve Owens avoided the question there, which was, with both of those players, are Arsenal going to make the top 4 next season out of 10? What are you giving it?
With just those 2 players, no. They need to sign another, I'd say another 2 or 3 players. I would agree with Eoin on the whole thing he mentioned about Willian's wages, but I did say to Ger the other day that I think Willian is the kind of player that Arsenal need to look at. They need 2 or 3 more senior players who have experience of winning trophies. Willian's been in a winning dressing room with Chelsea. He's got that experience. He's been in big games, Champions League games, big Premier League matches. He's got all that experience that I think Arsenal are lacking a little bit. You know, they've got some good players there who can score goals, who can defend. You know, the likes of Kieran Tierney, Aubameyang, Lacazette, Torreira, I think is a very good player. Jack has come good under Arteta. So they've got some really good players, but not a huge amount of winning experience. And I think that's what they're lacking in the dressing room at Arsenal. So I think this Willian deal has been floated around so long. I think it is going to happen, as Eoin alluded to there as well. I think it's, you know, it doesn't feel right talking about all this stuff. Arsenal players getting so much money and wage and stuff, and you've got all that stuff happening in the background. The 55 people being made redundant. You know, they really should be looking after those people first. But going back to footballing matters, I think Aubameyang, well, it's a no-brainer. You know, getting him on a long-term extension or a long-term contract is brilliant. I think if Arteta hadn't come in there, I think Aubameyang will be gone. I think the Arteta thing has worked out well for Arsenal in the sense that he will, or him being there, will make Aubameyang sign that new deal, and he'll stay with the club. What a record he's got! He's got, I think, 79 goals in just over 100 games. Absolutely fantastic player. He is what you need in Europe, in Premier League football. An absolute proven goal scorer.
And 2 out of 10, is that what you're saying for Arsenal top 4?
Arsenal top 4. Ooh. Well, look, it's going to be City. It's going to be Liverpool. I think it's going to be Manchester United. And then I think it's going to be between Chelsea, Arsenal, possibly Spurs and Wolves. I wouldn't say 10 out of 10. No, Arsenal
2 out of
7
10.
out of 10.
2 out of 10. 7 out of 10 for Steve Owen.
I'm going to go with an 8 here. I think Charlie Nicholas was on with us this week, and he says a few defensive signings would make Arsenal bankers finish 3rd. So I'm trusting good old Charlie on this one.
Asking you anything about Arsenal, it turns out.
But he might have meant a couple of defensive signings like Raphael Varane and Virgil van Dijk. Maybe that's who he meant. So.
Jorginho, it seems, is leaving Chelsea by all accounts. Possibly off to Juve. Frank Lampard obviously not a fan. Been some chat even overnight about Declan Rice again to Chelsea, following the path, of course, of the Chelsea manager if he goes ahead and does that. Is he the right fit? Because I mean, we've spoken about Jack Grealish before. We've mentioned a couple of players just there about their own, you know, future prospects at other clubs. Declan Rice, it seems, is like a big fish at a small club, and how he would cope at a Chelsea would be interesting to see. But a right fit, Steve-O, for that Chelsea side?
Yeah, well, he's a former Chelsea man himself. He was there till he was 14, so he's going back to the club where he adored JT growing up, and got a lot of advice off John Terry with his career before he moved on. But the one thing I'd say about Declan Rice is that I don't think he should be in any rush, really, to get out of West Ham. I've said on this show before, I think West Ham played really good football towards the end of the Premier League season. I think David Moyes, you know, has the guts of a really good team there. He's got a good back four, with definitely a good centre-half pairing with Ogbonna and Diop. And then in front of him, he's got Declan Rice and Thomas Souček, who signed permanently from Slavia Prague. He is a superb player. And I think Declan Rice has come really good playing alongside Souček. I think they're a brilliant partnership together. And if I was Declan Rice, I'd be thinking, well, I've got this guy beside me. I've got a good centre-half pairing behind me as well. Why not give West Ham a rattle for one more season? Hopefully they'll sign maybe a good striker up front, because, you know, Sebastian Haller, like, he's a really good player. I just don't know if he's gonna show that he's a Premier League standard. He's fair enough. He's had a few injuries this season, so maybe he needs a full run next season. But they've got some good players there, like Jared Bowen, the winger they signed from Hull in January. So they've got the guts of a good team there. David Moyes, whether he can keep that going for a full season, there's question marks over that. So if I was Declan Rice, I wouldn't be rushing out too much. The one thing Chelsea don't have that West Ham do is a good centre-half pairing. And if I'm Declan Rice, I'm thinking, do I really want to be running around putting out fires for this Chelsea team for a whole season, you know, playing, you know, in front of these it's been a joke shop of centre half, the centre half area for Chelsea the last season. They've conceded 54 goals in the Premier League. It's been a disaster. So, yeah, I don't know if I was Declan Rice, I don't think I'd be rushing out the door of West Ham just yet.
So, forgetting about Chelsea, your rating of his chances of or likelihood of him leaving West Ham at all out of 10?
This season, I'd say maybe 3. I think he might wait for another season.
Owen?
Staying with West Ham or leaving West Ham? No.
The likelihood of him leaving West Ham.
I think he's going to leave. I think it's going to be. I'm putting this at an 8. I think, I'd be interested here. We probably don't have the time for it, but is the biggest piece of business West Ham could do getting a new manager? Like you list the talent that they have in their squad. Definitely feels to me that for them to be in a conversation about being in a relegation battle is an underachievement. Granted, he wasn't there for the whole season, and he did take them out of it, and he did take them to survival. So objective completed. But I'd be very keen to see how hot that seat gets if they're in the lower reaches of the table again next season, because I think that squad is really talented and they've underachieved in recent seasons.
Yeah, but they did play good football. It wasn't that he didn't just save them; he had them playing good football as well. I think that he deserves a chance for next season. I think David Moyes has earned it because he has this reputation maybe for being a defensive manager, playing defensive football. But when he was at his peak with that Everton team, they played attacking, exciting football as well. And I think Moyes kind of rediscovered his mojo to a certain extent with West Ham, and I think he deserves a chance. And they've swapped and changed managers so many times, West Ham, over the last number of years. Maybe they just need to stick with somebody for a change now. And for Moyes to get the boot a second time from the one club will be just awful.
All right, you're watching OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle that head. Owen, where are you taking us?
Oh, this is time for our brand new Deal or No Deal slot. It's called the Deal or No Deal Teletext Quiz. So, just for the sake of actually putting up teletext graphics, no reason other than that to do it. As you can see on screen, we've got question 1, which is going to you, Steve-O. I know you probably can't see this. So we've got a couple of fill-in-the-blanks questions. So question 1, fill in the blanks in Damien Duff's career transfers. So it goes as follows. Blank, Chelsea. Blank, Newcastle. Blank, Shamrock Rovers. So for 1 point, I'm going to need all 3 blanks. So who did Damien Duff play for before he transferred to Chelsea? Who did he transfer to from Chelsea? Then he went to Newcastle. And then where did he go after Newcastle but before Shamrock Rovers?
Okay,
Stephen
so
Doyle.
Where did he go to from, who did he move from to Chelsea?
Yes.
Blackburn Rovers.
Blackburn Rovers. The second part, the second blank. Who did he go to after Chelsea?
After Chelsea, Newcastle.
Newcastle. And then finally, where did he go to before Shamrock Rovers?
Before Shamrock Rovers, it was, bloody hell, it was the Australian team. We totally forgot. Sydney.
Is that your final answer?
No, sorry, it was Melbourne.
Let's have a look to see if you're right. Blackburn, Newcastle.
Fulham.
Melbourne City. It wasn't you. Oh, who did you say second?
Newcastle.
It was Melbourne City second.
You said Fulham, did you?
No, Newcastle.
Oh yeah, grand. You were wrong. I already said Newcastle. Fulham is the answer. So you went to Chelsea Chelsea to Fulham. So you completely messed that up, to be honest, because you clearly had the knowledge, but you just gave the wrong answer. You got Melbourne City and didn't get the point, which I kind of feel sorry about. That was the only hard one there. So you don't score on that. Adrian, your question is this. Fill in the blanks in Robbie Keane's career transfers. So from Wolves to blank, to Inter Milan, to blank, to Tottenham Hotspur, to blank. I realise our question marks, not actual blanks, but don't be pedantic on a Friday morning.
You just want these in any order, I'm assuming. You're not looking for specifics here.
Oh yeah, go for any order here.
LA Galaxy, Liverpool, and put it back up there again.
Let's have a look. So Wolves to who?
Leeds, LA Galaxy, Liverpool.
Okay, let's see if you're right. Let's bring up the answer here. It's Coventry City, Leeds United, and Liverpool. So after Liverpool, LA Galaxy was quite late in his career. So no, you're both 0-all at the moment. Going into the final question, which is the tiebreaker. This is a question based on numbers. So according to reputable transfers website Wikipedia, how much did Arsenal spend on the transfer fee of Nicolas Pepe last summer? Adrian, I'm going to need a number from you, first of all, in pound sterling, please. Because
this is the positive. Why are you putting me in first? Steve-O needs to go in first here.
But you're on with us every Friday morning. You can go second next week.
This is bullshit way of doing this quiz. We should be texting your answers. Flash it back up there again. Let's have a look at teletext.
Nicolas Pepe, how much did he cost? How much did Arsenal spend on him last year?
I'm going to say they spent 26 million quid.
26 million. Stephen, can you get closer to the actual transfer fee?
72.
72. Bang on the money. 72 million pounds is exactly how much he cost. This guy knows his transfers. Congratulations, Steve-O. You are our first Deal or No Deal teletext quiz. How does it feel, winner?
It probably feels as it'd be the same feeling that Dublin players get when they beat Westmeath in the Leinster Championship.
Piss off, Steve-O. Piss off. Get off the soapbox.
Cheers, Steve-O. That's it for Deal or No Deal.
Thanks, lads.
Right, that is it for Deal or No Deal this morning. OTB AM has been live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Adrian, a disappointing end to a great show for you, really, overall.
Are you saying it was a great show for me, or are you saying it was a great show and a disappointing end for you? Which I'm assuming is
all of the above.
The case. Tough question. And to be fair, Steve-O, if he had gone first, still I wasn't going to win it either way, was I? So, no good stuff. What are you up to for the weekend, Eoin? Come on, let's have it.
Plenty of plans for the weekend. All to be revealed next week. I don't have any plans actually. You know, it's I don't know what was the alternate reality this weekend. All Ireland football semi-finals, I think, was probably the alternate reality. I'm not doing that anyway. Right, that is it from OTB AM this morning. I hope you've got a good weekend planned as well, Adrian. If you haven't got the OTB Sports app yet, go get it. Search for OTB Sports and download, because coming up on OTB Sports Radio today, which you can get easily on the app, at midday we've got the Paddy Power half hour. From 1 o'clock, we've got OTB Gold with none other than Chris Waddle. At 3 o'clock, then it's Friday Night Racing with Davy Russell. And then at 4 o'clock, there's League of Ireland Legends interview from Team 33 with Tony Sheridan. OTB Gold then is back at 6 o'clock. The life and times of Johnny Kilbane, or Kilbane, as he would have pronounced his name. At 7 o'clock, then OTB is live tonight and on your radio. And then from 9 o'clock, Team 33 is live. If you missed anything this morning, you can catch it back through the OTB AM podcast. It is time-stamped as well, making it easy for you to get to the item that you want to hear. The best place to get that is on the OTB Sports app. We had Niall Quinn, Gary Murphy, Deal or No Deal, and Graeme Souness with us this morning. OTB AM is live weekdays from 7:30. Chat to you on Monday. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.